St. Louis, it's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
Swacked into left center field. That's going to get down for a run-scoring hit. Weatherholt will score. Jordan Walker drives home his 30th run, and the Cardinals strike first in the first. Line in right center field. That's going to roll forever. One run scores. Walker on his way to third. They're waving it. Here comes the relay. Throw to the plate. Short hop and safe. Walker beats the wrap. Fermin comes through, and the Cardinals lead 3-0. Pitch is lined off the pitcher's glove and into center. Pozo has a run-scoring hit. Swing and a drive hit high in the air to right. JJ has left the building. A two-run homer.
That's what it sounded like last night on Cardinals TV. Alex and T-Bone both out today. We're going to be joined in studio by Jamie Rivers from 12:30 to 1:30. So looking forward to that. For right now, it is me and Bradford Bruns here on BK and Ferrario. Appreciate you guys tuning in. It is 11:05. Your time check brought to you by Clarkson Jewelers and officially licensed Rolex Jewelers. The Cardinals might have finally found the core they can actually build around. We've been waiting for this for quite some time. I asked this earlier today on social media, 314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. And you can check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/101ESPNSTL. If we assume that Jordan Walker right now is the Cardinals' best hitter, and I think that is a fair assumption based upon what we have seen so far this season, yes. I'm a believer in what we've seen from him thus far. Who's number two on the Cardinals? I think the only real answers are Herrera, Weatherholt, or Burleson, all three of which I could understand the argument for. But what makes this unique is that all three of them are under the age of 28. All three of them, along with Walker, I believe have the ability to be 20+% above league average offensively. And when you look at teams across baseball, I'm not even just looking at the Cardinals, but across all of Major League Baseball, teams that have had that kind of a combination, four players under the age of 28 that are regulars in their lineup that can be at least 20% above league average offensively, it's rare, man. In the last 20 years, there have only been four of them. It's the 2018 Yankees. They won 100 games. The 2017 Astros. They won 100 games. The 2014 Pirates and the 2010 Brewers. So it has happened twice in this division over the last 15-ish years. The Cardinals hoping this year to become the third team to do that in the NL Central. You look at those teams and what it ultimately represented for them, like Milwaukee in 2010. It was their two big boppers that they built around. It was Ryan Braun and Prince Fielder and then complementary pieces. You look at Pittsburgh. It was some of the guys that they built around for those big extended run, that extended run of them having success. Harrison, Marte, McCutchen. You look back at Houston. You remember that dynasty that they had built? Yeah, I understand there were trash cans involved, but it was pretty important that they had the young players.
No doubt. Altuve,
Bregman, Springer were three of the guys that did this in 2017 for them. And then ultimately the Yankees, it was the baby bombers. It didn't work out the way that they had hoped, but at the time, Didi Gregorius, Giancarlo Stanton, Miguel Andujar, and Aaron Hicks were the guys that were able to do this. I think we have talked about this a number of different times on why this season feels different. And there's a million different explanations for that. It goes into expectations. It goes into the style of play. It goes into the youth of the team, the clear direction of the team. I think a big part of it, though, for me, is that for the first time in a long time, I think you can see the foundation starting to build in what this is going to be, not just for 2026, but what the core is actually going to look like for future seasons. We've been talking about this for a decade in St. Louis of who are your building blocks? Who are you truly building around? At one point, it was like Steven Piscotty and Randall Grichuk. Another time, we thought it was maybe going to be Paul DeYoung. Way back when, we thought it was going to be Matt Adams as one of the foundational pieces of the offense. And it just never stuck, right? You never had the guys that were going to lead you. And so ultimately they had to supplement it with the best players coming externally. It became No, we're going to trade for Jason Hayward. We're going to trade for Paul Goldschmidt. We're going to trade for Marcell Ozuna. We're going to bring in Dexter Fowler. We're going to bring in Wilson Contreras. We're going to trade for Nolan Arenado. And those were stopgaps. Those were guys that, at best, were going to be at the top of their game for 3, maybe 5 years tops. These players you can dream on for the next decade. And so for me, what I think we're witnessing right now is the start of what will hopefully be a pretty extended run of these pieces being core members of the St. Louis Cardinals, and I think that's why it feels so different. You watched it last night. Wetherholt hits a home run. Jordan Walker with one of the biggest hits in the game. You're seeing these guys come through in big-time moments, and that feels quite different than what we've experienced with the Cardinals really in about 12 years.
Yeah, the mere fact, BK, that we're sitting here on May 13th and we're talking about a group, a pool of 4 individuals, however you want to slice up the order, right? You're talking about Burleson, about Wetherholt, about Herrera, and you're basically quibbling, okay, in what particular order would you arrange these guys? The great thing, the fact of the matter here is that unlike the previous groups you mentioned, even with respect to this organization, this isn't a referendum on Matt Carpenter days. It's not a referendum even going back to Alan Craig, etc. You're talking about the bluest of the blue chip prospects in a Jordan Walker and J.J. Wetherholt already paying dividends, and then alongside of them an Alec Burleson, homegrown as well, we might add. And talking about Ivan Herrera, these guys are all scratching their respective surfaces. And what we're seeing right now, the fact that we're getting these immediate results and that you're seeing a team right now that last night moved within 2.5 games of first place in the division. In the here and now, the results are great, but setting up for the future, that's of the utmost importance. That's what really whets your appetite, BK, for what's to come, because you're looking about this group, you're looking at this group, and you're thinking about projecting ahead, what could be in store, and already we're seeing this in the here and now. Who's to say that it can't be that much better moving forward? So that's what really gets people excited, and rightfully so, because you're talking about quality and quantity.
Now you look back to like 2013. You felt like you were maybe building something at that point. Now, it was a short-lived experience for some of the players that you had hoped to build around at that point. But, you know, you had Alan Craig, who was a young player and came up and immediately had a ton of success for the St. Louis Cardinals. Matt Carpenter in 2013 was 27 years old, and that was the year that he hit the 55 doubles. And so you looked at it, you're like, all right, we've got 2, relatively speaking, young players that are going to be big-time pieces for us in the future. That was also when you saw Matt Adams come up for the first time. He's 24, and he became a nice piece to be able to build around. Even that, though, to me, those guys were 24, 27, and 28 years old. Jordan Walker right now is younger than those guys were. He's only 23. J.J. Wetherholt, 23 years old. Ivan Herrera and Alec Burleson are the quote-unquote old guys in this group. Herrera's 25. Burleson's 27. As I was watching that game last night between the Athletics and the Cardinals, I thought to myself, man, these are 2 of the teams that if you were just going to put together a list of the cores across Major League Baseball, you were to say, hey, this is the building blocks of your team. I'm not looking at pitching, but from your lineups perspective.
Yeah, offensively, no doubt.
You get 4 players to build around for the next, let's call it 7 years across Major League Baseball. There are not many teams that you would take their current core group of position players, their top 4 guys, over the Cardinals or the Athletics.
That's true.
At this point in their respective builds. It sounds crazy because before the season, I don't know that that would have been the case for St. Louis. And a lot of people don't think about the Athletics that way. But guys, you're going up against the division-leading Athletics right now. Think about that just for a moment. The Athletics are currently number 1 in the American League West with a .512 winning percentage. And you went up against them last night and I think made them look kind of silly. And it's because they have the same issues you do. They just don't pitch.
It's very true.
They have no pitching whatsoever.
You could also make the argument that the Athletics, frankly, this season, despite being in the driver's seat, say what you will about the state of the AL West at present, I get that. But with Rooker having missed so much time, he's a linchpin, obviously, he's a pillar. Wilson being in and out of the lineup, currently sidelined too. There are different ways in which that team can improve as well. But the talent, the upside on that squad, I felt in a lot of respects, BK, as if we were watching maybe not a mirror image, but certainly a comparable equation offensively last night.
No doubt about it. All right, so the follow-up that I wanted to have on this, because as I'm watching that game last night, I obviously fell further in love with J.J. Weatherholt and what we've seen from him so far this season. What's there not to like?
Who wouldn't?
I didn't think he had this kind of power. I just didn't. I didn't believe that we were going to see the potential of him hitting 30-plus home runs, and that's what he's currently on pace for. We're only a quarter of the way through the season. A lot of baseball still left to be played. Nothing about this feels fluky. He has a great approach at the plate. When he gets the opportunity to hit a fastball, he crushes it. Now, anything else, he's not doing damage against right now. Breaking pitches, no. Off speed, no. There's not a whole lot of success coming against those. The fact that he's still finding a way, though, to draw pitchers back into the zone with the heater speaks to his plate discipline, which will allow him to have success against those pitches, I think, consistently this season. And already he's second on your team with 8 home runs so far in the young portion of the year. Is there something for you, Bradford, that is still holding you back from believing in the offense? If you're not a believer in the team, I think most people would say it's because of the pitching. You don't believe that the starting pitching will hold up over the course of 162, and the bullpen, while showing signs of life, especially in the back four, is relatively speaking thin. I can understand both of those arguments. On the offensive side of things, is there anything that you're still waiting for the other shoe to drop with? Or are you 100% bought in? There's no questions left for you at this point.
There is something, and it's an addition to what we discussed in the office before the show, because you can definitely have your qualms about not having faced a lot of opposing aces or even twos for that matter so far in the schedule. But there's nothing you can readily do about that. No, rather, it's when you get into the heart of the lineup and below that, because when you arrive at the number 5 spot, BK, we know that all but 15 of the at-bats this season for Nolan Gorman have taken place in that position in the order. You simply, if you don't have the thump when it comes to a Nolan Gorman, and then thereafter, you can definitely poke holes in the likes of Fermin Church, etc. I think the lack of consistent, proven answers when you get to the bottom part of the order right now, again, May the 13th, not having Lars Nootbaar back in the fold as of yet, that's what can give you pause, because the front four, make no mistake about it, has absolutely carried you. Now, if you're able to lengthen the lineup accordingly, if you're able to see more in the month of May from a Nathan Church, for example, if he continues to get that runway, then things can change. But if you're trying to really pit this lineup, the bottom portion of it, up against some of the other competitors, even in the NL Central, I think that's where people can justifiably have their grievances.
Do you think it's going to get worse from here, or do you think this is as bad as it gets for the bottom half of the lineup?
Can it really get worse, though? Can it truly get worse? No, I don't think it can. Because if you're talking about a reinforcement being on the way, if you're talking about being able to make that hard decision of maybe going with Nathan Church more so than a Victor Scott II, sticking to that plan, I don't see how it fundamentally gets worse, because what have you received from Nolan Gorman in the power department this season? What have you received, obviously, from the catching standpoint, other than when Herrera is behind the plate and hitting? Next to nothing. We know what has happened with Pedro Pages this month, so I don't know how it fundamentally gets any worse. It can only go up from here.
And I asked that question. It's a leading question for a reason.
Yeah.
I don't think the top of the lineup is going to completely fall off a cliff either. I think Burleson at a roughly 800 OPS is about what he is. Same thing for Ivan Herrera. Same thing for J.J. Weatherholt. I think this is about where they should settle in at. Jordan Walker might come down a bit from where he's at, which is a 950 OPS. I don't know that it's totally reasonable to expect that over the course of the season. That'd be a legit MVP candidate.
At least average-wise,
year for him. But at the bottom half of the order, I think it's probably going to get better, not worse. I think Mason Wynn could get a little better than this. I think you could see a guy like Lars Nootbaar come in and improve from what you've had with Victor Scott II so far this year. I think at some point we could see Jimmy Crooks. I think at some point we might see Joshua Baez. I think there's a possibility that you actually get more production from the bottom half of the order. I'm bought in, man. I'm not telling you this is going to be a top 5 offense in all of Major League Baseball. I don't think that's in their range of outcomes. Could they be a top half of the league offense, though, all season long? I think yes. I think it's in play. This could be a top 10 offense for 2026 based upon what you're getting right now out of those 4 guys that we began the conversation talking about. You have the pillars of the offense, Herrera, Weatherholt, Burleson, and Walker. The fact that you've got 2 righties and 2 lefties in that mix all of them under the age of 28 right now, speaks to just how different of a season this is for the St. Louis Cardinals and hopefully beyond. Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to be joined by our friend, the host of The Sheet, weekdays at noon on the Daily Faceoff. Our friend Jeff Marek returns to the show here on BK and Ferrario. Alex was able to come in earlier today, record that with me. So full disclosure, that is a pre-recorded conversation with Jeff Marek, and I can tell you, I think it's well worth your time. So we'll get into that coming up here in about 15 minutes. You guys can get involved in the show. The way to do so is 314-399-9646. You can always check us out on YouTube as well at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Coming up next, we did get a pretty significant update yesterday on Ahmad Hardy, both his potential absence for this season, what exactly took place with everything that has transpired over the course of the last week. And I want to talk about the football aspect of this coming up next. What does a potential Ahmad Hardy absence mean for the 2026 Missouri Tigers? We'll get into that next here on 101 ESPN.
Start your day with the morning after on 101 ESPN. Get in the know first on everything St. Louis sports with Tim McKernan, Doug Vaughn, and Martin Kilcoy. Listen to TMA weekday mornings from 7 to 11 a.m. on 101 ESPN. The morning after is presented by Brown and Crouppen Law Firm. Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
some news to pass along. This comes from John Rothstein, covers college basketball. Duke and Illinois will start a home-and-home series on November 17th. This year it'll be in Durham. Next year it'll be in Champaign. So December 4th of 2027, you'll see Duke versus Illinois. That should be a really fun home-and-home in college basketball.
Is this going to be part of that Amazon package?
Maybe.
Non-conference, big time.
Very much in play. But if you're an Illinois fan, you're starting to see, and this has been the case for a few years now, but they are unafraid of scheduling significant opponents in the non-conference slate. It's my preferred way of teams and coaches addressing the non-conference slate, but I think Brad Underwood is about as good as anybody when it comes to putting that thing together. That'll be a hell of a lot of fun to watch as we get further into the college basketball season. All right, on the Mizzou side of things, we got a significant update yesterday on Ahmad Hardy. First from Eli Drinkwitz and then from a Mizzou donor. Now, on the Drinkwitz side of things, he was addressing media and fans in Dallas at a previously scheduled meetup. They do this Zoo for You thing. They came to St. Charles, I think, last week. This week it was down in Dallas. And Eli Drinkwitz was addressing the fans in attendance there and basically said, hey, listen, we're taking this thing day to day. We do not have a timetable just yet. He said there is a chance that Ahmad Hardy could play for Mizzou this year, but then quickly followed that up with there's a chance that Ahmad Hardy does not play for the Missouri Tigers this season. There's just no real way to know. And for anybody that's wondering, what the hell are you talking about? Why wouldn't Ahmad Hardy play for Mizzou this year? If you missed the news over the last few days, Hardy was back home in Mississippi, where he's originally from, was at a concert in a relatively speaking nearby town, and as he was, according to multiple reports, leaving that concert in a car, he was shot in the leg. Now, we did get an update from Reed Millard, who is a donor to Mizzou, and he posted this yesterday on social media. I will read this for you now. Again, this comes from Reed Millard, a donor and a mentor for Ahmad Hardy in the Jefferson City/Columbia area. Quote, "We all know it's too soon to speculate on Ahmad's return to play college football. Both his orthopedic surgeon who repaired the femur bone and his trauma surgeon who cleaned out and repaired the soft tissue issues where he was shot said that Hardy should be able to have a full recovery. They were very positive about the outcome and added that a better prognosis to review his progress could take place in about 4 weeks. The two Forest General Hospital surgeons added that Ahmad is very, very lucky as a young man. The full metal jacket bullet penetrated through his wallet, into his femur, and then ricocheted back up into his soft tissue. The bullet did not enter into his colon or his bladder. If it was a quarter of an inch away, it could have hit his femoral artery, and it did not penetrate his sciatic nerve, both of which would have been devastating. My suggestion to everyone is to give Ahmad's medical team at least a month before you really start asking the big question of when he will be back on the football field. He will be, but when is the million-dollar question." So that is the update. Again, that comes from Reed Millard, who is a donor and a mentor for Ahmad Hardy. There's a lot there. That is the information that I think a lot of Mizzou fans had been wondering about is, okay, what does this all mean? Because the first thing that matters is he okay? Period. Like, is he going to be all right, not just for football, but for his life, right? This is the kind of situation where you see loss of life in these instances. It sounds as though that part of it, at least, he's going to be okay. And so in this day and age where there are millions of dollars at stake for Hardy, for Mizzou, for everybody involved, it is okay to then ask the follow-up question, in my opinion. What does this mean for Mizzou football? This is one of the guys that was a leading candidate for the Heisman Trophy in 2026. If it is possible that he misses the season, and it appears that it is at least possible that he does not play college football this year, that is a huge deal, both locally and nationally for Mizzou football. So I do want to talk about this from a football sense because ultimately that's our job here on this show. And Bradford, you're around this team as much as anybody. Let's go down the negative side of things first.
Sure.
Just out of curiosity. if Hardy is not able to play this season, what does that mean for expectations for Mizzou football in 2026?
I don't want to say that they become incredibly limited, but you definitely have to look at a potential outlook through an entirely different prism. Because the reality is that last season, as many contributions as Jamal Roberts made at the running back position, and look, this was a tandem by and large. It was the best rushing attack in the SEC. It was 8th nationally. But to take what would be a monumental step up for Jamal Roberts from 124 carries to who knows how many. Now, the flip side of that is, in late and tight situations, BK, you know as well as anyone, last season, in various fourth quarters, in various second halves, that coaching staff had the confidence, the utmost confidence, to turn to Jamal Roberts sometimes in place of Ahmad Hardy when ball security was definitely the foremost concern. He's fantastic when it comes to blocking. He's fantastic in terms of doing anything that is asked of him. But as far as the breakaway speed threat blended with the physicality, there's nobody else in the nation like Ahmad Hardy. So to me, it definitely puts even more of an onus on the new incoming offensive coordinator, Chip Lindsey, of whom a lot was expected, mind you, in taking over for Kirby Moore. And a lot has been put on his plate to do what? To diversify and to be able to be innovative with this offense. At the end of the day, though, how much of it comes down to getting above average to great quarterback play for the first time in a while? Because Austin Simmons is going to have to be the catalyst for everything moving the ball down the field. That's not to say you're still not going to have so much of an emphasis on the offensive line that you don't want to be ground-oriented. But with the guys they brought in, Caden Lee, with whom you should already have that rapport, the built-in relationship from Ole Miss. When you're talking about Caleb Goody, who can go down the field at receiver, stretch things vertically, maybe be Marquise Johnson plus having a route tree to boot, and then bringing back Donovan Olubade. A lot of the tools are still there in place, but the vast uncertainty lies with the fact that you just took away the second leading rusher in the entire country. And you have no idea what that means for the trajectory of the season and what looms as a very tough second half of the schedule.
You mentioned what I was going to get to there at the end, which is the schedule. The reason why this matters so much for Mizzou is because you look at what they have in the second half, and it's Texas A&M, it's Ole Miss on the road, Texas, Georgia on the road, and Oklahoma. I just mentioned 5 games there in the final 7, I believe it is.
Oh, yeah.
They could lose any or all of them. And Ahmad Hardy is the kind of player that you go up against those teams. At any point in time, he could break off a 70-yard run, and he completely breaks open the game.
Game changer.
Now, Jamal Roberts is capable of that as well, but I would say Roberts is more of a consistent runner, where Hardy is more of an explosive runner.
He's your home run
threat. Key difference between those two things. Explosives are kind of the name of the game in football right now. You look at the NFL, that's what everybody is searching for. Where can we get those explosive plays from? Because it is incredibly difficult with the way that defenses are playing nowadays to be able to consistently put together 3, 4, 5, 10-yard gains. So it's almost like baseball where you're looking for those home runs. Where is that coming from? And Hardy provides it. Are you going to be able to have that same amount of success on the ground this year with just really Jamal Roberts being your guy? I don't think so. I just don't know that that's realistic, and that's not a shot against Roberts. It's a reality of who Hardy is. So this puts all that pressure back on the passing game. And now it becomes a question once again of, are you able to extract more from your passing game? Can you get that ceiling out of a quarterback who has a lot of uncertainty, receivers that you don't know a whole lot about right now, an offensive line that lost an NFL player on the right side? Like, there are a lot of questions about the passing game, and that's ultimately going to be what dictates this thing. We're all hoping that Ahmad Hardy is able to come back, be back to 100%, look like his old self by the time you get to week 1. That's ideal for everybody involved. Is it realistic, though? Probably not. And that becomes the question of, all right, then what happens? What is this year going to look like for Mizzou? I think I would have to change my expectations for them. I think I would go from an 8-4, 9-3 type of a team to, you're kind of hoping to get 7-5 this year. And if you can get anything more than that, it speaks to pretty great returns from the passing game. I just don't know how realistic it is if you lose what is probably the best player on the football team and one of the, 10 to 15 best offensive players in the country heading into this season. There's a reason why on a lot of these way too early 2027 draft boards, you're seeing Ahmad Hardy go in the first round. That is the kind of talent that he possesses. Losing that would not be something you can easily replace at this point in the calendar.
No.
If this took place in November, might have been a different story because then you can go to the portal and get somebody. There's nobody available right now. That's not an option for Mizzou.
It's more than fair to alter those expectations, and perhaps, considerably so. Even that first game, when you think about the SEC opener, it's at home. Yes, it's against Florida, a team that certainly went through it last season. But with the new head coach on board there, we know, BK, that in Gainesville, you have as much talent as anybody. That's not going to be any sort of a cakewalk. I wanted to throw one X's and O's centric question at you, considering
quickly, we got to get to Jeff Marek on the other side.
All of the offensive talent there. Everybody wants to talk about the dynamic qualities of going downfield, and Austin Simmons can be that guy. Considering how much this team likes the tight ends, though, in addition to Norfleet, talking about James, talking about Jordan Harris, can you envision maybe a little more 12 personnel being employed this coming season, too?
Maybe. I think a big part of that's going to be on how much they like their receivers and what happens there. Because if you go, when you say 12 or 13 personnel, you're talking about one running back, 2 tight ends, or 3 tight ends. That's what that means, right, for anybody unfamiliar with the language there. And what that means is you take off your slot receiver. And Caden Lee is expected to be their slot receiver heading into the season. I don't know how much you're going to want to do that. So in short yardage situations, sure, that makes a lot of sense. But I don't know how often they're going to want to take what is probably their most productive and consistent receiver off of the field, who immediately has that kind of chemistry with the quarterback, where both of them are coming from Ole Miss together. Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to get into questions and answers. Don't forget, in the 12 o'clock hour, we'll be joined in studio by Jamie Rivers, so stay tuned for that. But next, I think one of the best hockey analysts in the business, one of the best insiders in the business as well, is Jeff Marek of the Daily Faceoff. He's going to join us once again next year on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN is powered by Kaufman Townsley, St. Louis's injury lawyers. Call 314-777-7777.
That's 314-777-7777.
Avalanche and Wild. Pre-game at 6:30, puck drop at 7. The NHL playoffs are on 101 ESPN. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Successful opener in Sacramento. Good morning, I'm Bradford Bruns. This Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Last night out west, the Cardinals held on to beat the A's 6-4 in the first game of a 3-game set between the two squads. J.J. Weatherholt adding insurance in the 6th inning with a home run, his 8th of the campaign. Andre Palante working 5 to pick up the victory. Tonight, Matthew Liberatore eyeing his 3rd straight win. He goes up against the righty for the A's, JT Ginn. Hockey, AHL variety, Calder Cup playoffs, Atlantic Division finals happening last night on 101 ESPN. Springfield was blanked by the Penguins 2-0 in Game 1. Tomorrow night, 6:05 marks the puck drop time for Game number 2 as the Thunderbirds get after it again. This Sports Center update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, a Daikin heating and air conditioning dealer.
We're right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
Very few people know the game of hockey better than Jeff Marek of the Daily Faceoff. You can hear his work weekdays on The Sheet, which is part of the Daily Faceoffs network. He's also one of our favorite guests to have here on BK and Ferrario. Full disclosure, we talked to Jeff Marek a little bit earlier today, which meant Alex Ferrario was able to join me for this conversation. We begin by talking about what exactly he thinks the Blues should do and will do this offseason. Here's our conversation with Jeff Marek of the Daily Faceoff.
With Alex Steen taking over from Army here, I really do wonder if, and here's like a second-generation hockey player. I'm old enough to have remembered watching his father Thomas play with the Winnipeg Jets a million years ago. I wonder if the St. Louis Blues look at it like this. Sometimes, like this is like a military analogy here. I read a lot of war books, guys.
You're like Ken Hitchcock.
I know. Listen, all these guys do, and they're all in love with Winston Churchill. That's what I've discovered over the course of my career. Sometimes taking a step back can be considered an offensive move, and I think when you're the St. Louis Blues, and like you could add right now, like you could, and try to get your way into a conversation for a playoff spot in a very competitive division, probably the best division in the entire NHL. I just don't know that would be the same move right now. Like that to me would be a move to say, we're going to be one and done, just get in the playoffs, and then we'll think about building something long term after we try to make another run and squeeze whatever we can get left of Jordan Bennington and Colton Parayko, et cetera. I think the same thing, and this is where I'm sort of at with the St. Louis Blues, and I'm obviously not in the rooms there, and I'm not in Steen's brain, but to me, the idea of, and not necessarily picking up, draft picks, like you don't have to be like fully in the green banana business here if you're St. Louis, but younger players around your established guys. Now, what I mean by that is, I think that when we look long-term at the St. Louis Blues, the next version of the Blues that are going to be a consistent playoff performer, it's going to have Joel Hofer in that. Right? Robert Thomas will still be there. Like, we'll go through all the guys that we think are still going to be there. Broberg's going to be there. Snuggerud's going to be there. Dylan Hall, like that whole first line is going to be there. Dalibor Dvorsky. I think so much of what St. Louis decides to do here depends on how quickly he can become a second-line center. So I think Jake Neighbors will certainly be there. I think what you try to do now is complement that base, knowing that you do have players on the horizon, right? Like I'm a huge Justin Carbonell fan. And if you saw him in the playoffs in the QMJHL this year, you think to yourself, like, okay, it's only a matter of time here, and probably sooner or later that this guy joins the full-time roster. So I would still be looking at taking a quote-unquote small step backwards, but looking at it as an offensive tactic to take, if we want to do a bunny hop analogy, one step backwards to take 2 or 3 steps forwards. that's where my feeling is at in the sort of big 10,000-foot, overhead picture of the St. Louis Blues is right now.
So, Jeff, we've had these conversations because it's the biggest thing that people are asking about is Jordan Kyrou. And I'm curious, just from your perspective of taking that offensive step backwards to maybe take 2 steps forwards in the future, would that involve trying to move Jordan Kyrou for future assets like younger players, Colton Parayko, you mentioned Jordan Binnington, or can you see a scenario where one step backwards is just running it back with the same roster this season?
I don't think you want to run it back with the exact same roster. I think right now you want to, you're kind of at the point right now with the St. Louis Blues. I think you do test the market on Colton Parayko. You do on Jordan Binnington. Jordan Kyrou is a little bit more difficult because I can still see a place for Jordan Kyrou with the St. Louis Blues. I'd hate to get rid of that kind of speed, but there will be a market for him. What do you get for him given the price tag? That's a whole other conversation. But I think, we're kind of at the place now where you're starting to say to yourself, we're not fully having this conversation, but for a lot of these guys, they're going to be, the St. Louis Blues are going to be judged by how much of a step did Jimmy Snuggerud take? How much of a step did Dvorsky take? How much of a step did Broberg take? You sell wins or you sell hope. And you look at all the guys that represent hope, and really at the end of the year, your only question is not about wins and losses. Your only question is, did the younger players get better? And how quickly can we get those players to a place where this is a competitive team and we stop asking, did Dvorsky get better? Did Snuggerud get better? You're turning potentiality into actuality. How quickly can you do that? And I think the beginning of that conversation is next season, once you make some moves in the offseason here.
Jeff, my experience doing local radio, and I'm sure the same thing has been true for you in Toronto, is that your fan base overvalues the players that you have. And when you try to make these legitimate conversations. Yeah, exactly.
That's every market in hockey.
But it's different here with one player in particular. With Jordan Kyrou, people basically say, hey, take a bag of pucks for him. I don't care. Just get him off of my roster. Now, that's overgeneralizing, but it is the case for a decent portion of the fan base. I want to ask you as an outsider, what do you think the value would be for the Blues if they decided to move Jordan Kyrou in some kind of a deal this offseason?
Put it this way, there's a huge market for someone with that kind of speed and that you can use in a number of different situations. And let me give you an example here. So let me try to think of a kind of a perfect one here. So remember when Jonathan Huberdeau with the Florida Panthers had, a 115-point season?
Yep.
One of the things that everybody sort of missed on was, one of the reasons why he was able to put up those points with the Florida Panthers where he wasn't with the Calgary Flames is they had Anthony Duclair on his line, a super fast player who did all the zone entries. And when you have a player that's that fast and can push back the defense on a zone entry, which in Duclair's case opened up a ton of ice for Jonathan Huberdeau, thereby giving him, much more room to create, there's value there. Even if he doesn't show up on the score sheet, what a guy like Kyrou does with his space is he opens up ice for everybody around him. Look at a guy like Nick Ehlers, for example. Nick Ehlers is never going to put up 100 points. But why was he valuable to the Carolina Hurricanes? He's valuable to the Carolina Hurricanes because he can push defensemen back. And he can open up ice for other players on the zone entry. And I don't think it's a surprise that what's happened with the Winnipeg Jets last season is directly related to, amongst other things, certainly, but the lack of speed that Nick Ehlers presented. And that's why I always say, to St. Louis Blues fans, I do understand the frustration. I always caution, be careful what you ask for here, because that is one of those things that coaches value like crazy, where fans may just look at the boxcar numbers and say, we want 40 goals every season out of Jordan Kyrou. We want 85, 90 points every year out of Jordan Kyrou for what we're paying him and what the potential skill set is. There's a lot of things that you sort of take for granted when you look at a player that has that kind of creativity and that kind of speed. That's why I always say to St. Louis fans, just don't be – I get the frustration, But don't be like a Maple Leafs fan that just wants to run every defenseman, starting with Larry Murphy, out of town, right? Like the Maple Leafs, for example, have a long history of finding one defenseman, whether it's Brian McCabe or Larry Murphy, who went on to win Stanley Cups with the Red Wings, or Corey Cross, or Thomas Caberlet, Jake Gardner, like Aki Burley. They've always found one defenseman, and he becomes representative of the entire of all the problems that the team has. Don't do that with Jordan Kyrou, because even if you don't realize it, there's 31 other markets that do realize what Jordan Kyrou can bring to a team.
So, Jeff, on the draft side of things, the Blues with the 11th overall pick, 15th overall pick, and then wherever Colorado seems to land at the end of the season. 31. Yeah, let's just bet on it there. We've had these internal conversations in St. Louis of, seeing San Jose, seeing Chicago, the Rangers, and potentially wondering if you have the assets to trade up. Is this the draft worth trading up if you're the Blues, or are you comfortable at 11 because you're still going to get a really good player?
If you're going to look to get up into that, rarefied air, do it next year. Not necessarily this year. You're going to get a good player, right? Like you're not going to get, obviously you're not going to get any Gavin McKenna's and Stenbergs and Caleb Malhotras and these types of players. But considering where the drop-offs happen, there's going to be a large group of players, whether it's, Tynan Lawrence from BU, whether it's Vito Bjork, smallish center, but again, Swede Hastings had a really, really great junior tournament. I like JP Hurlbert, the American kid who went to Kamloops this year, left winger, a little bit on the slow side of his feet, but really, elite level creativity and vision. Still surprised that what USA Hockey didn't do with him. If you want size, you can look at Marek Dagenet, old Pierre Dagenet, former Montreal Canadian. His son, 6'4", snarly centerman. So you have Nikita Klepov, Saginaw, left winger, led the OHL in scoring. He's going to Michigan State next year. So you're going to have a lot of options. I don't know that this is specifically the year, unless you can get into the top 5, maybe top 6, if this is the year that you want to make the big move. Next year should be a bonanza, and everyone's going to get to know Landon DuPont and Alexei Joseph. So I would keep the powder dry this year at the draft and just go and make your picks.
As a follow-up on that, Jeff, I've got a who says no question for you. If the Blues called up the San Jose Sharks and said, hey, we'll give you Kyrou and Parayko, you give us the number 2 overall selection, which team do you think would be more likely to say no to that conversation?
San Jose, because they could get a better package from someone else.
If the Blues included number 11, does that change things?
No, I don't know that even that package would be enough to get them off of number 2. Like it needs to be a young, established stud defenseman to play alongside and or above Sam Dickinson in San Jose. Otherwise, I don't think you can do it just by adding volume. I think you need to add quality to that one, and that trade's not getting it done.
Well, Jeff, man, we said that the hockey season never ends, and this offseason is going to be an exciting one here in St. Louis. So we always appreciate the time, man. Friend of the show, Jeff Marek. We love talking with you, my friend. Enjoy the rest of this postseason, and we'll be talking as we get closer to the draft.
As I always say, buzz back anytime. Only too happy to come on with you guys.
That's Jeff Marek, one of the best in the business. Always enjoy getting his insight into what the St. Louis Blues could or should do this offseason. If you want to find more of his work, you can check him out on The Sheet. Weekdays, it is a video show, podcast as well. It is on live at noon, but go ahead and check it out on the podcast side of things so you can listen to us first. That is available for you over on the Daily Faceoff. You can also follow Jeff on Twitter at Jeff Marek. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Cardinals. I believe their manager has become a legitimate asset at this point in time. I know that's not the popular thing to say, popular narrative. However, I think last night you saw just how much he can help you win games at this point in the Cardinals build. But next, 314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers here on 101 ESPN.
You can now watch 101 ESPN live on our Air Alliance Team Studio Cams. Catch every show live on our YouTube channel or at 101ESPN.com. 101 ESPN Studio Cams.
Presented by the Air Alliance Team Heating and Cooling. Getting the job done quickly, correctly, 100% of the time.
TMA? Then nominate yourself to be the Morning After Listener of the Month, and you could be selected and score a Form Energy prize pack. Sign up now at 101ESPN.com or TMASTL.com. The TMA Listener of the Month Club is presented by Form Energy. We do the work. This is exactly where you want to be, listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. You've got questions, BK and Ferrario may have the answers. Questions and Answers is presented by 100 West Dental. Does your dentist actually satisfy you? Dr. Pryor and his team will at 100westdental.com.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and get them in right now on the Air Comfort Service text line. You can also do so over on YouTube at youtube.com/101ESPNSTL. This first one comes from the 314. Guys, do you think it would be considered an unsuccessful offseason if the Blues do not trade Kyrou, Benner, or Parayko in order to improve the team. I think my perspective on this is quite different than probably the majority of the listening audience right now. I do not think that would necessarily mean it's an unsuccessful offseason. I'm not of the opinion that they have to trade Kyrou, though. And I think that's really the one that people would pinpoint here as being important. Like Benner, and we've seen around the league, teams just don't value goalies that much in trade. So if you're not going to get a significant return for him, there's no real incentive to trade Jordan Binnington. All of these teams need 2 goalies. You're going to need him to start about 40 games next year. So why deal him if you don't get something of significance back? Parayko, I kind of feel the same way about. He's got a full no trade clause. He gets to choose where he's going.
Yeah.
If you can get the deal that they were reported to be offered at the deadline from Buffalo, sure, go ahead and take it. But I don't feel the need to move him if you're not going to get something of significance. And then it goes back to Kyrou, and I wouldn't trade him at his low point unless you're getting, a legitimate return. I just don't feel like they need to do that.
Yeah, I would say that Kyrou and Benner maybe are the bigger names involved here. But when it comes to legacy, when it comes to somebody like Colton Parayko, who's been there for 1,000 games, almost literally, is it the worst thing in the world if you are to come to an agreement, if you are okay, if all parties are good, and slowly the minutes get scaled back just a little bit as well, but he is there to be the veteran leader for your next generation in Broberg, in obviously Mayu. That's not a bad situation whatsoever.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 636. Guys, would it be a good idea to consider reuniting Monty and Berube on the coaching staff? If you missed it earlier today, news out of Toronto, the Maple Leafs have officially decided to move on from Craig Berube. He's guaranteed, I think it's $4.5 million each of the next 2 years on his contract. I'm guessing there's some kind of offset language, so if he takes another job, that goes down a little bit. But I don't know exactly what you need Berube on the staff for. And that's not to say he's not a good coach. I think he's a very good coach. And I think he had a tough situation to handle in Toronto. They wanted to do one thing, and ultimately, I think about halfway through, realized that's probably not the best way to go with our personnel. I just think for what the Blues need right now, I would like to bring in a younger defensive coach that can work with your guys that are growing through your system right now. I think that's the number one thing. And then probably, I think you need somebody that's going to be focused primarily on the power play. So I don't know exactly where Berube would fit for this team. I like him as a coach. I don't think this is the best spot, though.
And is the motivation there at this stage for Craig Berube to serve on the staff of a Jim Montgomery, too? With all due respect, I'm of the opinion in the Camp BK, Alex has referenced on numerous occasions here on the program, it feels like more of a developmental position, a Jay McKee type, for example. But then again, you also obviously have to address the power play, which has been the biggest bugaboo for so many people.
If they add him, though, I won't criticize the decision, but I just don't know that that's necessarily the direction that I would prefer to see them go. All right, 314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line. Couple more quickies here before we get to the Cardinals on the other side. Do you guys see the Cardinals adding a starting pitcher of some sort, maybe Peralta, possibly Robbie Ray at the deadline? And do you think that would be the smart way to go about it? I'd like to see them add a starting pitcher. I don't think that it would be somebody like that, though. If they're going to go add, I think you're looking more in the people won't be excited about it, but somebody to stabilize things a little bit, because you are probably going to deal with injuries at some point over the course of the season. And what that would allow you to do, depending on what happens between now and then with Kyle Leahy, for example, you could potentially put Leahy back into your bullpen. He'll probably be running at some kind of an innings limit by that point in the season anyways. And it improves your bullpen and your rotation with one move. So I think you're probably targeting somebody that's more in that mid-rotation starter.
Mid-rotation, bargain bin, however you want to categorize it. Look, Chaim Bloom has been adamant about the philosophy. You're not going to see some sort of a sea change. You're not going to look at this start in a vacuum and say, okay, we're going all in, even if you're within a couple of games of first place when that deadline time arises. No, you're going to keep the long view, obviously. And I just don't see any sort of a seismic acquisition at this point in time being made by the team.
From average size Shabangas?
That's the guy.
Guys, I love the Redbird Report. Any chance you could do it twice a week? For anybody that has not seen it yet, we did do a Redbird Report yesterday. I know normally we do it on Thursday with T-Bone out this week. The rest of the week, we decided to record a little bit earlier. So we do have that out. YouTube.com/101ESPN STL is the place where you can go to find it. I'll be just totally honest with you guys. The best way to do that is if somebody wants to advertise with us. If you want to sponsor it, there would at least be conversations maybe about doing more of them. But this is a business, ultimately. And that would be the way that could happen.
BK, if that team can play 17 games in 17 days, you guys can do it twice a week.
Yeah, we could. I'd be open to doing just about anything. I'm not above anything, but it would probably require some kind of financial commitment elsewhere. So if you're somebody that has a business, is interested in sponsoring the Redbird Report, hey, man, go ahead and get in contact with me, get in contact with the station. We'd be happy to talk about what we can do for that. But for right now, once a week is kind of the way that we're going about it. It has been, I will say this, the response to it this year has been amazing. Last year, we just got it going. We were between a couple of different studios. There's a lot going on. But the response this year has been pretty remarkable. The one that we did last week was the most viewed podcast in the history of 101 ESPN's YouTube page.
Did you guys get to 10 on that yet? It's close, right?
Just about, yeah about 10,000 views over there. And this week already, in just less than 24 hours, you're already at almost 3,000 views over there on YouTube. So we can't thank you guys enough for the response to it. But yeah, if we're going to do more, it's probably going to have to require some kind of a sponsorship that is tied to it. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we're going to be joined by Chris Kerber, the voice of the Blues. But next, the Cardinals manager has officially become an asset for what they're trying to accomplish right now. We'll talk about the coaching staff, what they've done next here on 101 ESPN.
WXOS HD1 East St. Louis 101 ESPN is driven by Brown and Crouppen Law Firm.
Get social with 101 ESPN. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, Threads, Blue Sky, and YouTube at 101 ESPN.
They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
Alongside Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. In just a little bit, we'll talk to Chris Kerber, voice of the Blues. And in about 15, 20 minutes, we'll be joined in studio by Jamie Rivers, who's doing an extra shift today here on 101 ESPN. Jamie just walking by, looking at us like, what, am I in now? Nope. 20 minutes from now, Jamie Rivers will be joining us in studio on BK and Ferrario. Alex out today, T-Bone out today as well. Alex will be back in tomorrow, T-Bone out the rest of the week. So I want to give a little bit of credit to Ollie Marmol. I know that is not something we're supposed to do in St. Louis, but I think he's done a damn good job for the St. Louis Cardinals this year. And yesterday I thought was a really good example of the kind of value that a manager can still have in Major League Baseball. It's not a ton. It's not this. The managers don't have the same power that they once did across the sport. This used to be a manager and players game. Now it is a general manager and players game, where the GMs are the ones that have the majority of the power. They're the ones that are second in command behind only the owners. And that's changed in the last, I would say, 20 years across Major League Baseball. Basically, since TLR was here, it's not just the Cardinals, it's the entire league where the landscape has shifted on the power dynamics. What they can do, though, is they can still pull certain levers to give your team a slight edge. It's a slight advantage in some of these games. And I thought yesterday was an opportunity for that for the Cardinals. And we talked about this yesterday on the show, and I know there was some pushback on, like, hey, guys, they're going to start Nolan Gorman. Like, why are you talking about this? They didn't. The reason that we talked about the lineup yesterday is because it was a really intriguing spot against a left-handed starter where you did not have Ramon Urias to go to. And because of that, it opened up some other spots in the lineup. The other thing is Victor Scott is no longer just a guaranteed starter in center fields any longer. Now they're trying out this Nathan Church in center thing to find out, all right, is that a direction that we can go whenever Lars Nootbaar returns from the injured list? And it's working. So yesterday they go to Fermin, Pozo, and Sajaci. 3 right-handed bats against a lefty starter. And in the first inning, Fermin with the 2-run double, Pozo follows that up with an RBI single, and unfortunately, Thomas Sajaci goes 0 for 2 with 2 strikeouts. He's now 0 for his last 28 with 13 strikeouts overall. Also does not have a walk in that stretch. Has only been on base, I believe it's 1 time, and I think it was a reach by error. So it's not going well for Sajaci, but those other 2 guys that were put into the lineup yesterday came up with some really significant moments. That's the kind of thing that Ollie can do for you. He can construct the lineup in a way on a day-to-day basis that gives you an advantage. He can go to the bullpen in certain spots where you're using guys the right way. He can use your bullpen arms in a way that's not going to wear them out over the course of the full season. And over the last few years, Cardinals have been about as healthy as anybody when it comes to what their overall pitching staff has been able to do. I also think he deserves a little bit of credit for the way that he's brought along George Soriano. He started him out in low leverage spots, learned more about him, and now he can use him in the higher leverage situations where he trusts him. Ryan Stanek was being used in those spots. Now he's coming in earlier in games because the trust level is higher in Soriano than it is in Stanek. So I think this is a well-managed team. They have a very specific style of play, and they go about things in a way that I think represents what Ollie wants his team to be. So I would say right now in 2026, I don't know if people have always viewed it this way. I think maybe I have more than others. I think your manager and really your overall coaching staff has developed into quite an asset for this version of the St. Louis Cardinals, and that's significant with such a young team.
I think the timetable has obviously been accelerated in that regard, okay? We wanted to see in this year of transition, build, rebuild, however you want to categorize it. We wanted to see all of these individuals get their respective opportunities and then hopefully at some point during the summer, maybe even early in the fall, coalesce and then really whet your appetite for the next couple of years to come. Little did any of us know, frankly, that this team right now would be several games above 500. And as you stated, BK, really the proof is there as far as the development on the fly and quick development at that at the major league level as orchestrated by this coaching staff. And we spend so much time talking about the linchpins and the key cogs, right? Jordan Walker in the midst of a would-be all-star season. J.J. Weatherholt has been a revelation as a rookie. But it really does trickle down throughout the roster to the last guy, or basically the second to last guy. When you're talking about, for instance, somebody like a Jose Fermin, hadn't started in 9 days. No matter, because Ali Marmol and the staff with the confidence to plug him in against that left-hander, because all this guy does is give you quality at-bats, and he kind of personifies really the attitude of that staff, and he's more of an old-school Cardinal, right? He gives you the attributes, he gives you the performance, and then Pozo also coming up big last night as well. It's really the perfect blend that you've seen so far as the stars, quote-unquote stars, actually producing the results, and then when necessary, the Pozos, the Fermins haven't had a lot of opportunities, but last night was a big spot against the lefty. The first game in that series against Oakland, you knew against Springs that you had to get to somebody like that with the velo early. You did precisely that because it was approach-based and it was smart from the very first inning.
Yeah, I thought it was just the right way to go about it. And ultimately, they went to the bench later on in the game. They went to their hands team later on as well, and it gave them the best chance to win. So I think they did a really good job with that. The other thing that they did well yesterday and overall so far this season is they've found adjustments. Like, you look at the coaching staff, they deserve credit for what Jordan Walker has become as a hitter. It's not all them. Walker deserves more praise than anybody else, but the coaching staff is not without praise for his development so far this year. Alec Burleson has turned into a really good major league hitter, and that is in part because the coaching staff worked with him on honing in his aggressiveness. You look at this pitching staff right now. Soriano has not been this for any other team that he's been on.
No.
And he's developed into this very quickly with the St. Louis Cardinals. Dustin May is, for the first time in like 5 years, a capable and quality major league starter. Andre Palante, I think, looks better than he did a year ago. Michael McGreevy has unlocked some strikeout stuff compared to what he was previously. You add all of this up, the Cardinals coaching staff, I think, has done wonders this season to develop this team along. And I think what it does for me, as I'm watching this team, is it allows me to now look at some different players, either on the trade market or in free agency in the future, and say to myself, I could see how the Cardinals could be the team that gets the most out of that guy. Whereas previously, I have not necessarily always felt that way, especially on the pitching side of things. It was more of go get the sure thing. Now you can potentially go take some chances, and maybe you can unlock things the way that the Giants have done with pitchers or the Rays have done with pitchers. Maybe that is something that is in the Cardinals' future as well. Coming up here in about 15 minutes, we'll be joined in studio by Jamie Rivers for the next hour. That'll be a lot of fun. Looking forward to having him back for an old school Rivs and BK here on 101 ESPN. But next, Chris Kerber, voice of the Blues, here on BK and Ferrario.
We want to hear from you. Use the Scott Lee Mic Drop feature on the 101 mobile app. Give us your opinion on anything St. Louis sports with a mic drop.
Brought to you by the Scott Lee Heating Company.
All right, you got to get Classic Air Care out there to make sure that you've got that AC tuned up and ready for the summer. It's only $89. That's their May special. And there's no payment, no interest for 12 months on a new HVAC system. If you've been in the market for one and you know that, okay, this is coming, the time's now, jump now. Get Classic Air Care out there, and they can get a new HVAC system put in for you. No interest, no payments for 12 months. So whether you need a new HVAC system or you're trying to maximize the life of that current air conditioner you got at the house, Classic Air Care has you covered. Again, the May special, a tune-up, just $89 for less than $100. They come out to your house, they clean it, they make sure everything's blowing right, the temperature differences and variances are where they need to be, and everything is ready. That's the number one thing you can do, aside from changing your air filter, to make sure that you extend the life of the system. ClassicAirCare.com is where you go to book an appointment.
Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
Alongside Bradford Bruns today, I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex is out, T-Bone out. It's the two of us today here for the next 10 minutes or so. And then we've got Jamie Rivers stepping in studio with us starting at 12:30. But right now, happy to go out to the Callier and Thompson hotline to be joined by Chris Kerber, voice of the Blues, joins us each and every Wednesday here on the show. Kerbs, how you doing today, man?
BK, I'm good. How are you?
Doing really well, Kerb. So I want to start by discussing something that I saw in the playoffs yesterday. So the Vegas Golden Knights now up 3-2 against the Anaheim Ducks. And I think this represents an intriguing storyline in the NHL where I know he didn't score last night, but Mitch Marner is one game away now from reaching the Western Conference Finals in his first year with the Vegas Golden Knights after being considered to be a player that can't succeed in the postseason for almost a decade with the Toronto Maple Leafs. What do you make of this story, Kerbs, and what it potentially says about, hey, the player versus the team situation, et cetera?
I don't think it says anything about the player. I think it says everything about a team sport and the team game and the scenario there in Toronto. It doesn't look like Toronto did any better this year without him, right? And they just fired Craig Berube today, right? So it, to me, looks to me like the decision of letting Mitch Marner go out of Toronto might have been a bad decision. Listen, this whole thing that, well, he couldn't win, you can't win with this guy. People used to say that about Brett Hull. And he goes and he wins 2 Stanley Cups, you know, and like, so that's a phrase and that's a line of thinking that has always kind of bothered me a little bit there. It's a team sport. There's an attitude, there's a culture, there's a difference in Vegas than there is in Toronto. There's an attitude and culture difference and everything that as there is in Florida, as there was in St. Louis in 2019, and it takes that to win. And Toronto doesn't have it. Toronto didn't have it, and I don't think that. I just don't think that it was a Mitch Marner issue. And I've been reading and watching Canada melt down over this topic, or at least Toronto melt down over this topic over the last few days, and I'm laughing at it. You know, I'm like, you're really, like, guys. You know, I mean, now they're talking. Well, geez, does Austin Matthews want to stay? You know, look, 100-point players are 100-point players. They can play. Find a way to get them to play the right way, and then you've got things going really well. And I think it screams a lot more about the Toronto Maple Leafs than it does about Mitch Marner.
But what does it say about the Craig Berube situation when you look into that, Kerbs?
Listen, I think Toronto, in my opinion, right now is an absolute mess, even more of a mess than where they were. We're going to find out in time. I look at that scenario there. And there's a lot of question marks with the general manager that they brought in. We'll see We'll see if, and I hear it pronounced different. I don't know if it's Cheka or Chika. Okay. The one thing I think we could get right is if somebody could let us know how to pronounce the guy's name right, it would be good. But he had a horrific first time as a general manager and a lot of negatives against him in Arizona. He now gets a second chance. We'll see how that one goes. A new GM comes in, says, I want a clean slate. I want to change the culture, attitude, everything. I want a clean slate. I am surprised that they let him go and use that chip right on the early part. They clearly must not have seen eye to eye on how a certain couple things want to go. So, good news is Craig Berube gets paid for a couple more years by the Toronto Maple Leafs. But we know firsthand and up close and personal that Craig Berube is a good coach. I think Toronto has had a roster issue more than anything else. And when you go through the coaches that they've gone through, the style of coaches that they've gone through, and look, sometimes BK, it just happens. You open up a window to win, and they couldn't figure out how to advance it and get through it. The Edmonton Oilers have advanced it further, haven't gotten through it. The Florida Panthers opened it up, got through it. The Tampa Bay Lightning opened it up, got through it, battled in, looks like they're falling out of it. The Blues got in there, fell out of it pretty quick. Same with Washington. It happens, but to get to that next level, it really takes something. And sometimes it just doesn't happen. And it looks like Toronto, it hasn't happened.
Chris Kerber is the voice of the Blues. He joins us weekly here on BK and Ferrario. Kerbs, who's the team that you most want to see win the Stanley Cup this year?
Oh, man, there's a couple of them that missed the playoffs. I think the ones that are remaining, okay, the ones that are remaining, I think in the West, I would point at Minnesota. Just such a great market, good ownership, good general manager. I'm kind of in the West. I'm looking at Minnesota.
It's quite the uphill climb right now, Kerbs.
It's a massive uphill climb, and I'll tell you what, I think it's showing everybody come playoff time just how good Colorado really was throughout the regular season.
They're
right?
special.
So I think in the East, and this is just pure rooting interest. Who do I want? Buffalo or Montreal. And I got to pick one here. So, what the heck? I think it'd be a phenomenal story. Miss the playoffs 14 straight years, then go win the cup. So I'll go Buffalo in the East.
That would be mine. They've got the Blues connection, of course, with the Tage Thompson thing, as you have with the Canadians. But Buffalo, just as a market, smaller market, passionate fan base, they have loved that team forever, and they have been delivered a whole lot of crap for more than a decade, basically, in that market. So for them to be able to get over the top, and I think that would be the one that I'm most rooting for. In the Western Conference, though, man, I don't know how anybody beats this Avalanche team. And I know nobody here likes them, but I enjoy watching them. Makar and McKinnon is amazing. And then the fact that they're as physical as they are, Kerbs, I think that's maybe the thing that goes most overlooked with Colorado is they are a team that plays the way that wins in the postseason, despite the fact that they have two of the fastest and most skilled players in the league.
Listen, as a lifelong St. Louisan, it stunk watching Detroit win all those cups, right? But my goodness, did they play a fun style of hockey to watch, and with exciting players. Colorado won a couple of years ago. They retooled the roster a little bit. Going back out, bringing Kadri back in, they said we're getting rid of assets and we're going to continue to stay in the window, and it's been good. They've got one hell of a coach in Jared Bednar, who clearly seems to be following the trajectory and the path of a John Cooper in terms of longevity and success. If he can get another Stanley Cup, especially, right? I think. Aside from the ownership, who in St. Louis were conditioned to really dislike quite a lot, the product on the ice is fantastic. I think, listen, I'm impressed as all heck with the Anaheim Ducks and what they're doing with Vegas. I think that's fantastic. I still think to this day, you have a hard time telling me that Joe Quenneville still isn't the best coach in the game. Even with his time off, what he's been able to do in there. I just think he's that good at figuring it out in the playoffs, and he's given Vegas some fits. They were an overtime game away from Anaheim taking a 3-2 series lead, right? To me, the Stanley Cup final matchup that appears to be the most competitive matchup in my book is going to be Colorado versus Carolina. Like if you're talking about, one that might not be lopsided, that to me is the Stanley Cup matchup that probably gives you the most competitive scenario.
Kerbs, let's swing it to the Blues side on the way out, or the top affiliate, that is. Springfield now facing the 1-0 series deficit against those Pins in the AHL Calder Cup Atlantic Division Finals. You can hear Game 2 tomorrow night on 101 ESPN. We know, or at least we think, Kerbs, based on the personnel losses for Steve Ott's teams, it would seem as if Adam Juracek, Justin Carbonneau, with at least a pair of games to go at that level. What have you seen from those guys so far, and how invaluable could this experience be going into the offseason?
Well, that hip check that Juracek threw in his first pro game was just spectacular. Carbonneau is going to be good. He's got a smell for it. This is a spectacular experience for them. Like, I know they were playing 7-game series at junior hockey, but now you get to do it at a pro. It's a great wake-up call whenever their season ends, and let's hope it continues to go for a while, of exactly the kind of offseason they have. And both of these young players seem to have that attitude that they need to come into Blues camp next year ready to go and ready to take a spot if they can do that. I'm loving what I'm saying. Guys, I got my player on the outside looking in. My favorite Springfield Thunderbird on the outside looking in, that's not in the Kaska, Maki, Lindstein kind of breath yet. It's Dylan Peterson. Everybody down there talks about this young man as a great teammate, what he does. Does he have the game to be successful here in the NHL? I don't know, but here's what I was told. I was told that if he gets here, he might be one of those kind of players and teammates that just make sure that he never lets it go. And he's had a solid postseason. That's my off the radar player to keep an eye on as we head towards next year. But it's a great run for these guys, and you got to be thrilled to see Steve Ott having that kind of success, because when he does, I think it might have been with you guys that he did the interview, and he said that one of the things he mentioned about, it's proving to him that he was ready to be a head coach. And I love that statement from him. So I'm excited. I'm excited for what they're doing. And I'm equally excited that the partnership has been there too with Springfield and 101 to make sure that Blues fans can hear these games.
It's been great. Awesome. It's been great, and you can hear those right here on 101 ESPN. Kerbs, appreciate the time as always, man. Be well. We'll talk with you again next week.
Okay, guys, have an awesome week. Cheers.
Yeah, that's Chris Kerber, voice of the Blues, joining us as he does each and every Wednesday here on BK and Ferrario, typically at 12:30. Today at 12:15, we've got Jamie Rivers, the former superstar Blues defenseman, joining us in studio coming up next. And I want to talk a little bit about the Blues with him. We talked earlier today with one of my favorite guests that we have on the show, Jeff Marek, and he mentioned, hey, if you're going to trade Jordan Kyrou, you're doing so by acknowledging we're going to lose out on that speed that's coming up the ice. What would that mean for the Blues? We'll talk to Jamie about that next year on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN is powered by Kaufman Townsley, St. Louis's injury lawyers. Call 314-777-7777.
That's 314-777-7777.
Give us your opinion on the Air Comfort Service heating, cooling, and insulation text line at 314-399-9646 on 101 ESPN. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Redbirds ambush A's early. Good afternoon. I'm Bradford Bruns. This SportsCenter update is brought to you by Universal Windows Direct. Last night in Sacramento, the Cardinals prevailed by the final of 6-4 over the A's, scoring 4 runs in the first inning. Then in the 6th, J.J. Weatherholt launching his 8th home run of the season. Riley O'Brien finished off the save in the 9th. Andre Palante picking up the victory. Matthew Liberatore eyes his 3rd victory of the season. That game is later tonight. Once more at 8:40 first pitch, JT Ginn will go for the A's. Hockey NHL news, Toronto firing Craig Berube after just 2 seasons. The Leafs missing the playoffs again this year, but do own that #1 overall selection in the upcoming NHL draft. Tonight, the Avalanche looking to close out Minnesota in Game 5 out west. We will have that puck drop at 7 o'clock. Pregame at 6:30 right here on 101 ESPN. The SportsCenter update has been brought to you by Universal Windows Direct. You'll be saying, I love my windows.
We're right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
Alongside former Blues superstar defenseman Jamie Rivers, I'm Brandon Kiley. It's an old school edition of Ribs and BK here on 101 ESPN.
Good to be back, boys. How we doing here today?
Doing great. Good to have you in. Jamie's going to hop in with us for the next hour here on BK and Ferrario. Then he's, got to prepare for some other radio show that comes on at 2 o'clock. But we're appreciative of him doing so. So, Jamie, earlier today, we were talking with Jeff Marek of the Daily Faceoff. I think he does awesome work.
Yeah, I've known Jeff for a really long time.
He's one of the only people in North America that will actually defend Jordan Kyrou. And he came on here and he's like, listen, I don't know why people want to move on from this guy. Like, be careful what you wish for. If you do so, there's a speed element to your team that you lose. Mm-hmm. And that is something that he brought up Nikolai Ehlers, who with the Winnipeg Jets, that speed was sorely missed this year. And you look at what he's doing now in the playoffs, and it's something that has been very impactful. Now, Kyrou is not a physical player. He had a down year. We can acknowledge some of the deficiencies while also talking about the positives that he brings to the ice. And so I wanted to ask you, Jamie, because I don't think this is something that gets brought up a whole lot lately. If the Blues were to trade Kyrou, and let's say they did so for future assets, whether that's picks, prospects, whatever, what are they losing if they decide to make that move? Because I think normally it's, well, get rid of him. He's a cancer. Okay, but what about on the hockey side of things? What would they be losing by moving this guy?
First of all, Jordan Kyrou's not a cancer, okay? Within the 4 walls of that locker room, Jordan Kyrou, it just sticks to his own program. He's not like a vocal guy. He's not a unliked player. He's just sort of there. He's a dude in the background of the movie, basically. He's an extra in the locker room. But then when you get him on the ice, let's just go over the numbers. Starting in 21 and 22, 75 points. The next year, 73. The next year, 67. The next year, 70. That's what you're losing. You're losing that element. 37 goals, 31, 36, 27 the year before that. Who else is putting up 30 goals? Who put up 30 goals this year, by the way, for the Blues?
Yeah.
No, Bradford, you know who did that? I forget. Who?
Jamie, I don't believe it happened.
Oh.
No.
Who put up 25?
Also,
Thomas gets 25 this year?
I don't think.
He was right around that range. I think he ended up finishing
I think it was
the season
23.
in the neighborhood, he didn't surpass 25.
No, he got 25. He did 25. So
how about that? Hockey guy BK.
There we go.
Coming.
But who else, right?
Yeah.
Like, you had 3 guys score 20 goals. Or, well, what year?
4.
4 guys score 20 goals. But when you look at Jordan Kyrou, I understand. Everybody has to have the one player they don't like. And it just happens to be several people pick this one. It used to be Colton Parayko. It used to be Jay Bouwmeester. It used to be, like, pick your pony. Blues fans have had somebody who they don't like and then go, oh, you know what? not too bad. Like, now you talk about Jay Bowmeister. They're talking about putting a statue down at Enterprise Center, some of these people. Yet they were the first ones to say, that's a terrible deal. Why would Army make that deal? Then you find out that him and Colton Parayko were two of the best shutdown defensemen in their Stanley Cup run. So you don't have to like Jordan Kyrou. It's fine. If you like big, tough wingers who bleed all over the ice and make the opposition pay physically, he is never going to be your guy, ever. But if your team, like the Blues, think back a couple of years ago. Think back to Kevin Hayes' era, okay?
I would prefer not to.
No, but let's just do that. How slow was your team overall?
Very.
It was very slow. And so when you have guys like Jordan Kyrou, he's always 2 steps away from breakaway possibility. You have to embrace some of the hurt when you watch his game and then look at the numbers. And you can say, well, what about last year? I get it. Every really good player has got a couple of bumps in the road. It just happens for whatever reason. I would say he didn't have much of a center iceman to play with this year. I know you agree with that.
Yep.
And it was a revolving door for a while. And even on the wing, the other side, it was a revolving door for a while because the Blues were desperately trying to find secondary scoring somewhere along. In fact, at one point, they were trying to find first-line scoring, and they weren't getting that. So in doing so, you kind of clip the wings of a guy like Kyrou who can bring a lot of offense for your team. And it showed this year with only 46 points. Do I think he's going to do that again next year? No. I think he'll be back to 60-plus points next year. So if you wanted to get rid of that for a prospect, a draft pick, what do you know about this draft pick? How many games has he played in the NHL? Has he put up 30 goals yet? Has he hit 65-plus points yet?
You're probably hoping for him to become Jordan Kyrou.
Yes. How many years ago, I think we may have been on the show together. People were all over Colton Parayko. Mm-hmm. And I said, the moment you trade Colton Parayko, you're looking for the next Colton Parayko. So
I think the thing with this, Jamie, is it's a style thing, right?
Oh, I totally agree.
And you're right. Like, there are a lot of Blues fans that just want more Jake Neighbors, less Jordan Kyrou. I think there is value in having both, right? Like, you kind of want, I've always heard this about in the NFL with wide receivers. You want to create your wide receiver room like a basketball team. So you want a big guy that can go up and get it. You want a small guy that's able to go across the middle of the field, right? You want guys with differing skill sets to be able to win in different ways. I think the same thing is true for a baseball team, right? You want your lineup to have a variety of skill sets. You want a guy that gets on base. You want a guy that hits for power, average, etc. You need everything in order to win. That makes it harder for the opposition to line up against you. The same thing is true in the NHL. We're on a line. We've seen when the Blues are at their best, at least in my opinion, they've got a guy on the wing that goes in and does the dirty work. Call it a Jake Neighbors.
Call it a Dylan Holloway.
Sure, absolutely. They've got a guy at center who can distribute for your partners. And then you've got a guy on the wing that does some of the stuff that, maybe it's not appealing to everybody, but they can fly up and down the ice. Vladimir Tarasenko wasn't exactly that, but the shot played. And guess what? People got mad about the lack of physicality sometimes, and he didn't use his size, all of that stuff. You don't win a cup without Vladimir Tarasenko being on this team. And he goes about it differently, but Kyrou can, in my opinion, can still be a valuable asset for a legitimate contender in the NHL. Jamie, I guess my question to you, though, because you watched more of the league than I do. I watched the Blues, and then now this time of the year, I'll watch a little bit of the other postseason games. But do you see other guys in the playoffs succeeding the way that Kyrou does? Because I think that's the biggest retort that I hear, and it's hard for me to necessarily say something against that.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're talking about, so if Blues fans want to talk about physicality and grit and getting involved in all that, I know Mitch Marner's having a hell of a playoff, and he's speed and skill. And look what people in Toronto thought of him. Think of Mitch Marner. Think of Jordan Kyrou. Not exactly the same.
Sure.
But close as far as like their production and what they can, the speed, the skill. You don't think Toronto would have liked to have Mitch Marner last year? Be careful what you wish for. Because the moment Jordan Kyrou leaves, there goes 60-plus points, 70-plus points that you have to replace. There goes one of the fastest skaters in the NHL that you have to replace. So how do you do that? How do you fill the void? You don't know.
I think some would say Justin Carpenter.
then I almost said a bad word. Because
that's what I hear.
I know, but he's not Jordan Kyrou.
You've got to find ways to get him into the lineup.
3/4 of the speed of Jordan Kyrou. They're not the same player. They're not built the same. And do we want to go back to Jordan Kyrou's numbers in junior? Because we can do that too. Because that's a fun game to play.
They were pretty good.
Yeah, really damn good. And look at people now in the NHL. Everybody loves Justin Carbonneau.
Mm-hmm. He hasn't failed yet at the NHL level, so that's why we love him. We do this with prospects in baseball, too.
But he has.
The guy that hasn't failed. That's fair.
He has. Because as training camp went on, it was more evident that he had work to do. Otherwise, he would have stayed a Blue. So, and it's okay. Justin Carbonneau, it's not me rooting against Justin Carbonneau. I want him to come in and score 50 goals. I would love him to be the next Brendan Shanahan. I don't think that'll happen, but I would love that for him. But you can't just say, "Oh, it's right wing for right wing." There we go. Get rid of Kyrou. Put Carbonneau on there. We'll live with the growing pains. Are you living with the growing pains now? Because Kyrou has had the same problems since he came in the league. Well, hasn't he learned? Maybe not. But he's definitely put up real numbers. Justin Carbonneau hasn't put up any numbers yet. Yet you're willing to live with the warts, not knowing that there's positive.
So the next follow-up to this would be, and this is where I think most of our listeners get mad at me, because
you want them to get mad at me now, don't you?
Well, I'm curious
I see where you go with this.
I'm curious where you would go with it.
He does this stuff. He tries to deflect it.
They know where I stand on all of this stuff. If you keep Kyrou, I think the concern from some is, well, that's the piece you can move this offseason that allows you to change something.
Good, get better with him then. But don't just give him away.
So if that's not out there, if there's not a team that's willing, it could be twofold here. One, there's nowhere that he's willing to go that's willing to give you that piece. Or two, there just aren't teams that are willing to give you something that upgrades from Jordan Kyrou. So you're having to trade him for future assets, and you decide, you know what, not willing to do that. I want to improve now, not later on. How do you shake this up? Or do you need to shake this up? Because I'm of the opinion, hey, if there's nothing out there for you this offseason, so be it. You return with kind of the same core. You've basically got everybody back on contract right now. It's not as though this is a team that's in a bad cap situation. You don't need to go out there to this free agency market, which is mostly god-awful.
It's not great this year. It's a bad year. I wish I was a free agent this year, I'll tell you that much.
Cap going up, not many options. It'd be great.
Baby. Sign me up.
You can bring most of these guys back again next year and then pivot either at the deadline or next offseason, because you've still got an opportunity then to make deals when you're maybe doing so with a better year for Jordan Kyrou coming off of it, et cetera. But is that something you would be opposed to? Are you okay with them basically running this thing back with the same roster?
Yeah, and let's just add can I please add the obvious layer of obstruction? It's called the no trade clause. I love people shopping players around. Torrey Krug said, nah, I'm good. Colton Branco said, nah, I'm good. Braden Shen said, I'm good. Till they kept asking and asking and asking. Finally, he got pissed off and said, fine, trade me. The no trade clause gives the player power. You're going to try and waive Jordan Kyrou and send him down? Go ahead. Good luck. The first team that pops up is going to take him. So you can't just say, we're going to shake it up. What are you going to do? You're not going to play? Well, you're going to pay me $8 million anyways. Until somebody steps in and takes me eventually, then I might waive my no trade. But the player has control. So in order to shake things up, you would have to ask said player. And the strategy, I don't know what the strategy is behind the closed doors of Steen and Armstrong right now. The strategy in the past, from what I hear, has basically said, like, you're done here. We're going to trade you, so do you want to move your no trade clause? And even those players said, no, I'm good. I'm good. But the strategy I would apply, which may be what they're going to do in the future, and maybe what they have done in the past, again, I'm not in those conversations, is, hey, listen, we're really trying to make a move here. It's not that you don't fit into our plans. We're just trying to maximize a deal because we have to get back to where we want to be. I know you have a no trade clause. Do you have 5 to 7 teams that you would love to go to? If so, give me that list. And if I can't get a deal done with those teams, I'll see you at training camp. And there's no hard feelings. I'm not mad. I'm not like it's not like we got to get rid of you. We're just making a move.
That's basically the Matthew Tkachuk situation, right?
100%.
He gave them
But
a list
Matthew
of
did
reported
that.
5 teams. Yeah, sure.
Matthew was the pioneer of telling the team, hey, listen, I'm not coming back. I know I have another full year in my contract, but I won't be back.
Yeah.
So if you want to go shop me, here's where where I go. And it worked out great at first, and then Calgary's suffering now and whatnot. But when you go back and look at that trade, you think to yourself, that was a great hockey trade. 115-point player in Huberdeau. Mackenzie Weegar's a top pair defenseman. You did good for the Calgary Flames. You did great if you're the Florida Panthers.
No doubt.
But so I just don't think the answer is always just grab one player and like everybody get a hot button on this. I think you're fine to run it back. I really do. And just for craps and giggles here, I pulled up some junior hockey stats for all our fans out there. Jordan Kyrou, in his third year at junior, had 94 points. In his final year at junior, he had 109. Justin Carbonneau, in his third year, had 89 points, and this past year, he had 80 points. So if you're thinking that Justin Carbonneau is going to step in and take over for Kyrou, he's not quite even the player Kyrou was in junior. So let's just pump the brakes. Let's let Justin Carbonneau be great at developing, and then hopefully one day with his big frame at 6'1", 200-plus pounds, goal-scoring ability, he turns into a middle six player for you.
That'd be a win.
It'd be a win. It'd be a huge victory.
If you can get that out of Carbonneau, you have added another core piece to this. It's cost-controlled, relatively cheap for the next few seasons, and that's the kind of thing you need to keep stacking up if you're going to have an opportunity to win with this pack mentality that they've developed instead of having one of those superstars that you see on Colorado or Edmonton, Florida, etc. He's Jamie Rivers, former superstar St. Louis Blues defenseman. I'm Brandon Kiley. That's Bradford Bruns here on 101 ESPN. Coming up here in about 10 minutes, Lars Nootbaar might be exactly what the doctor ordered for this lineup. We'll get into that in a little bit. The Juncture next here on 101 ESPN.
The American Hockey League Calder Cup playoffs can be heard exclusively on 101 ESPN. It's the Atlantic Division Finals. Game 2, Thursday night. Thunderbirds and Penguins. Pre-game at 5:50. Puck drop at 6:05. This is your exclusive home for Blues hockey. 101 ESPN. is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Let's open it up. The Junk Drawer is presented by Bet365. With Bet365 early payout, you win even if they lose. Get paid out instantly when your team goes up big, even if they blow the lead later. Bet365. Winning is everything.
All right, let's dive into the Junk Drawer. Jamie, I want to get a story out of you, and we'll start with this. John Stevenson.
I was like, I'm not talking about Vegas.
No, it might have to do with that, but we'll see. John Stevenson is a 50-year-old gentleman. He had a stunt that he decided to take part in the other day. He was going along the street. He was dragging a car. Now, you may ask, why would he do that? What was he doing? He dragged a 2-ton French police car 40 meters alongside a residential street using only his manhood. He accomplished the
hang on, backtrack for a second.
Yep. You heard that correct.
Using his actual, the manhood?
The manhood.
Okay. I thought it was just being, manhood. But no, I got you now.
This comes from Yorkshire Live.
Yeah.
He accomplished the extraordinary stunt on Thursday as bewildered local residents looked on. We continue. Employing a tow rope fastened to, medical term, his penis, John managed to haul the car along the road, and despite acknowledging that it, quote, hurt quite a bit, end quote, the father of 3 confirmed that everything was indeed still intact.
Okay.
What's the stupidest thing you've ever done? Because this has to be up there.
Yeah.
That's got to be among the top 5 dumbest things I've ever heard.
Yeah. Well, there's a list of things. I know you probably find it hard to believe. There's a list of really dumb things I've done in my lifetime. Set myself on fire one time just to see how long. We were at the lake, and I was wearing pants, and we had a fire going, and I was like, I wonder, how long I could be burning before, I feel it. And so...
How old were you at this point?
Oh, 17, 18.
So nonchalant.
Yeah, well, it really was, because the lake is 20 steps away, so it wasn't I never felt like I'm not at harm's way. Well, I went up in flames a lot faster than I thought.
Yeah, that's how that works.
Yeah, no damage to the skin. I didn't burn or anything like that, but thank goodness.
Did you stop, drop, and roll? What?
I just dove in the lake. That's why that's why I was willing to do it. So it was dumb, but it wasn't completely unthought out. There was a plan. And I remember lighting the pants, and they went quickly up my backside, and I went backside straight into the water, boom, in we go. I was like, yeah, guys, that happens fast. So that's Exhibit A.
Sure.
Exhibit B, we talked about me getting shot in the head. That's another one. It's a long story. Joe Thornton came on the show to talk about some of that, too. He was my teammate, and I still had a piece of the pellet lodged in my head, and he used to rub it for good luck. He'd say, here, show me the pellet. And we had to have it taken out. So that's Exhibit B.
Naturally.
And then Exhibit C was right here in St. Louis. Jim Campbell was present for it, and was living in my apartment downtown. And an FBI friend of mine had given me a taser. Now, this was before they had the shooting ones. This was just the handle ones with the spikes. And I go, what do you
I've heard those hurt.
Well, they do. So I'm standing there with this thing, and he turned it on, and goes, you hear it power up. I'm like, ooh. And Soupy's like, don't touch me with that. I go, it can't be that bad. This little thing in my hand, these little prongs. I'm a pretty big guy, So there's a little bit of alcohol involved, too.
I would imagine most of these stories would have had something a little bit.
1 in 3, 2, no alcohol. I wish I could claim there was alcohol in that one. So I took the taser and hit myself, but in the chest. I really wasn't thinking, your heart.
Clearly.
Yeah, and I dropped bam, to the ground. I was like, oh, that hurts. that hurts. And my whole body was like stiff. Like, picture your whole body cramped up really bad, and you're trying to work through it.
Now, mine was not exactly a taser, but when we did the TENS machine, which stimulates pregnancy, that's how I felt when Alex turned it all the way up, where I was like, I can't move right now.
Yeah, your body starts doing stuff that you can't control. So, yeah, those are probably those are on the podium of first, second, third.
I have nothing that even approaches any of those. As you can probably imagine, I'm a little more straight-laced. Same. I do radio for a living. That's kind of the crazy in me. But other than that, yeah, I don't have anything that is anywhere close to any of that stuff. But this guy, he's a former martial arts specialist, and he's a former bare-knuckle fighter. Previously made headlines for dragging a vehicle using only his testicles.
Was it his testicles or the other?
Yep, nope. This one was the opposite. He also towed a car while his head was engulfed in flames. So this is rounding out the trio.
So he has a thing. Mm-hmm. He has a shtick.
Yeah. He's probably apparently a very strong one, too.
He's highlighting men's health.
I don't know if that's the way to do it. Of all the things I might want to do, I don't know if that's the way I want to do it.
I'm not entirely sure how that highlights men's health, but it definitely highlights men.
Men's something.
That's Jamie Rivers. He's a superstar defenseman once upon a time. He's Bradford Bruns. I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, Lars Nootbaar. We once thought he might be a superstar. He might be exactly what the doctor ordered, though, for this lineup. We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Don't tase me, bro. Don't tase me.
WXOS HD1 East St. Louis. 101 ESPN is driven by Auto Centers Nissan, home of the lifetime warranty and 30-day return. Spread Zone, where sports Sports betting meets reckless optimism, questionable logic, and the occasional stroke of genius. With hosts Anthony Stalter, Tim McKernan, and Scott Rizzuto. Check out the latest from the Spread Zone at 101ESPN.com or the 101 mobile app. The Spread Zone is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
Alongside Jamie Rivers and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. Typically, BK and Ferrario, we're doing a throwback Ribs and BK here on 101 ESPN today. So I think a lot of what happens with the Cardinals in recent years, Jamie, is we get into this situation where instead of talking about what a player is, we talk about what he's not. And so we look for the flaws in guys that will prevent them from becoming the next star that they've been looking for.
Do you think that's because the expectations are so high and these players are underperforming?
Some of that, yes.
You know what I mean?
I think what it is...
We put them all the way up here, and when they don't reach that, we're like...
I think there's some truth to that. I think the other piece to this is my perspective on it. I don't know, I'm curious where you come out on this. Like, some of it is people were so desperate for a homegrown star that they're waiting for the next guy. They want the next guy to be it. So it was supposed to be, once upon a time, Dylan Carlson, and then it was Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman, and you've got all these guys that come through, and they've got the prospect pedigree, the minor league success is there, you're sold what they're going to be from the front office, and then they just don't become that. And so you feel disappointed. With Nootbaar, he was a guy that came onto the scene and like all of the advanced numbers. I think this is part of the pushback for him. The advanced numbers that I buy into are like, hey man, this guy's gonna be really good. Like he draws people into the zone and then he hits it really hard and people are like, yeah, he hits 230. Yes, but there's more to a baseball player than just the average is what my retort would be. But he's not a star. He's not. There's no way for me to claim otherwise. He's just a good, productive baseball player. And Jamie, this might be exactly what the Cardinals are missing right now. Because in previous years, I do think they kind of needed him to be more than what he was. They needed him to be, a 260-ish hitter that hit for more pop than what he did. But now, with J.J. Weatherholt getting on base the way that he is and currently on pace for 30 home runs, and Jordan Walker currently on pace for 45 home runs. And Ivan Herrera and Alec Burleson forming the top four with them as well. Lars Nootbaar can just be that piece that's supplementary. And whenever he does something that's a positive, hey, man, that's nice. He can carry your offense for a couple of weeks. He gets on base at a really high clip. He does hit for a little bit of power. The Cardinals lineup might finally be set up to where he can just fit in where he's always probably been best, which is 5th or 6th in your order. Might be exactly what the doctor ordered for this team.
If he can stay healthy. Because that's
a big
that
part.
Right now, every time you bring up Lars Nootbaar's name, no matter who it is you talk to around town, at Busch Stadium, in these four walls of any radio show that's on this station, if he can stay healthy. And I've had this discussion with Carey and Anthony. Anthony is completely just disgusted. He's done. He's
Newt?
With Newt. Because he's the one, look at all the underlying numbers. See, he's the next Babe Ruth, And that's an exaggeration, of course. Sure. But I get it. But he can't stay healthy for an extended period of time. So two things can be true here. One, he can't stay healthy. It's just fact. Two, he could be exactly what they need. I couldn't agree more. I said it the other day, and I kind of took some heat from the show, which is fine. I'm not afraid to take the heat. But, that left-handed bat in the outfield, like right now, your left field, you're like, well, what do we got here? Like, Nathan Church had a good little run. I like Nathan Church, but can Lars Nootbaar bring more to the table? Yes, he can.
And I'm not even sure that's who he's replacing. I think he might actually be replacing Victor Scott.
So would you move Church to center?
I would.
So that's how it works then? That's fine. Victor Scott can't hit the ball.
Defensively, and I don't think that the downgrade from, let me put it this way, the upgrade from Scott to Church offensively is much more significant right now than the downgrade you're getting from defense and center field.
I would agree with that. Look, Nathan Church is really fast out there too, and he's got a better arm.
Much better.
He's got a much better arm. So I'm fine with that. But all of this is based upon if Lars Nootbaar can stay healthy.
It's a huge if.
I know.
And we're still like 3 weeks away from his potential return. But let's use that if, and let's say he's healthy. Mm-hmm. And he's good to go for you. Now, I don't think right away he's going to be starting every single game, but maybe he's a platoon bat for you. He plays in the outfield against right-handed pitchers. He's starting 4, maybe 5 days a week for you. I think it all depends on, but maybe, sure, because this team doesn't exactly, like when Herrera's behind the plate, on those days, you saw yesterday, they don't exactly have a great option for that DH spot. So against right-handed pitchers, if you're getting a day
get him some reps, like instead of having him be off the bench,
get him off his feet.
Get him 3 or 4 at-bats at least.
Totally cool with that. But he is somebody that at a minimum is around league average or above offensively. And what you're replacing...
He's solid defensively, too.
And you're replacing Victor Scott, potentially, who is one of the worst, least productive hitters in Major League Baseball. I hope that is not the case by the time that Nuke gets here. But so far this year, that's the reality with what you're getting out of Victor Scott. Man, if you're telling me your lineup could be 1-6 by early June, you could have JJ at the top, and then you go like Herrera, Burleson, Walker, Newt, and Mason Wynn. Then you've got Nathan Church potentially at 7. You're talking about a lineup that starts to resemble that of a contender. Not a World Series contender. Let's not get crazy. That's the Dodgers.
You better be careful.
We know who that is. But you get into the 2nd or 3rd tier in the National League, I don't think you're even the Cubs right now. That's okay. You don't have to be that right away. It can take some time. But for right now, that's the kind of lineup that you've built enough wiggle room right now, Jamie. That's a playoff team potentially.
Listen, they might be a playoff team without that having to happen. It's going to be a lot harder, and I'm still a little bit on the fence as if this rotation can actually get them there.
Sure.
In talking off the record to a couple of former Cardinals pitchers, said that the pitch to contact is fine. First half of the season, everybody's pretty energetic. Defense is on their toes. Second half of the season, there's fatigue, there's injuries, there's heat. All of a sudden, those little squibblers find homes out there, and the games become a lot longer. So you're going to need something there.
It is interesting, though. We had this conversation a little bit ago on the show, Jamie, in talking about somebody who was so contact-oriented, right? In a Michael McGreevy, for instance, who has been far and away your best starter thus far. You would think at some point, okay, if and when will that regression set in? But the conversation that we were having actually did revolve around what this coaching staff as well has been able to do in short order, trying to basically maximize and kind of extract maximum value from some of these guys we didn't necessarily think would be great shakes, at the beginning of the season. So on one hand, you would consider, all right, maybe a McGreevy will come back to the pack. Maybe even a Palante won't be as solid moving forward. But then on the flip side of the coin, you think about what this staff has been able to do quickly and how much more can actually be there as you roll this momentum. So
yeah, listen, I think it's fine till it's not fine. And unfortunately, that pitch to contact mentality kind of rides that line. Everything's great until it's not great. And I think that, certain injuries that have happened make it more difficult because you thought you were a little deeper than you are currently. And, hopefully things get better. But it's going to be interesting for me. But back to the original topic here, Lars Nootbaar. If he can stay healthy, he can absolutely help this Cardinals lineup. He makes this team better.
He makes them better, and the offense is going to have to be the identity. Because I agree with you, Jamie. I do think that the rotation is eventually going to be the weak point for this team. That is the one thing that prevents me from really buying into what they've been. But this lineup, I mentioned it in our open today. I think they are the kind of lineup that could and probably should finish top 10-ish in Major League Baseball.
They're annoying to play against.
Oh, they're annoying. And it's not just that they're good. It's also that you look at it and you're like, they weren't supposed to be this, though. Like, Walker was awful. One of the worst hitters in Major League Baseball.
We were expecting a DFA at some point.
And now the guy is hitting like Aaron Judge.
It's unreal.
You look at what they have right now in J.J. Weatherholt, even people that really liked J.J. Weatherholt as a prospect had questions about the power. And the question was, like, can he be a star if he doesn't have that power tool? Well, right now, I don't know if this is sustainable or not. I don't really care yet. He's on pace for 30 home runs, man, as a rookie. That's insanity.
Yeah.
to be able to do that as a rookie, batting leadoff at this stage in your career, when you're also learning a new position at the major league level. To be able to do all of that.
Watching him play defense at second base.
He might win the Gold Glove this year,
It's
Jimmy.
unreal.
It's
him
crazy.
and Mason Wynn, we had that talk on our show. I brought it up. I said, are the Cardinals starting to become the best middle of the infield team in all of baseball?
They're up there at a minimum. They're in that team picture somewhere.
Watching that chemistry that they've got, turning double plays and the way they do things, it is really fun, man.
I also love the chemistry between them. And I'm not even just talking about on the field, like what Wynn and Weatherholt bring to the table. I'm talking about what...
Talk about this chemistry.
They have, like, a swagger about them that is surprising to me. Now, Wynn's always had that. That's not surprising. Weatherholt just seemed like a very straight-laced, down-the-middle, Paul Goldschmidt type that I was expecting him to come up and just be classic Cardinals.
No, he's not that.
Dude, the way he pimped that home run yesterday, like, that's the stuff. And then him going back and forth with Wynn where he's like, no, you're the man. That stuff is different. And it brings a different energy to the clubhouse and to the diamond that I think the Cardinals have needed for a really long time. And you can't fake it.
What's that, fun?
That can't be artificial. It's got to be something that comes naturally. And like Newt brought some of that stuff previously, but it's got to be something.
He was kind of on an island when he did it.
Everybody's got to buy into it. It can't be part of the team.
Yeah.
And right now, it seems like everybody has that, and it's infectious. It's fun for me to watch as somebody that's just watching from home. I can't imagine what it's like in the clubhouse right now.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to watch. And we talked about this the other day on the Fast Lane. I mentioned it. I said, you know what? Like Paul Goldschmidt, the big bear, he was quiet and whatnot, did his thing. Maybe he wasn't as fun as certain people wanted him to be. Nolan Arenado, from what I hear from people around the club, great guy, all those things, hard worker, not exactly the most fun guy, especially when things were going rough for him, and I don't blame him for that. But you have a couple of those guys who are elder statesmen and carry a lot of weight. It's tough for the young guys then to find that fun, that groove, that swagger, because you got a couple of older guys that aren't doing, like, things are not going the way they want. So I think by Chaim Bloom moving those guys, and Sonny Gray, for that matter, nothing against Sonny Gray. Contreras, I think we could have been fine had he stayed, whatever. But now, you got Burley who's playing every day, which I love that. But you're right. These young guys are like, they're free to fly. Here you go. Go, guys. Do what you want.
And it even goes beyond that. Like, before those guys were the elder statesmen in the locker room, it was Yadi and Wayne.
Well, yeah.
And this is not to denigrate anything they accomplished or to say anything that's negative about them as people, but it's just, and Jamie, you've been in locker rooms. It's a different vibe. Like when it's their locker room and they're the ones that are able to dictate, the way that things work inside of the room, it's different than when it's a 25-year-old group for the most part. And they're the ones that have the biggest input in what the travel schedule looks like and what you're doing going out to dinners and all of these different things. That adds up over time. Is it the biggest thing in the world? No. Are you good or are you not? That's ultimately the thing that dictates things more than anything else.
And sometimes they go hand in hand, too, by the way. The attitude and the fun and all that is predicated upon actually being good, too.
100%. Because if you suck on the field, you're probably not going to spend as much time around the ballpark. You're not going to be as excited to go to the ballpark every day. So it's a little bit of both, but it adds up right now to a team that's having a lot of success.
Loved it.
Yeah.
You're not barking in the dugout and throwing on the chain if you're sub 500.
There you go.
Period.
Alongside Jamie and
Fancy
Bradford
words
on
by
BK.
Bradford.
It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. We got a lot of reaction to our Jordan Kyrou conversation earlier today. I would ask Jamie what the lesson is from Mitch Marner and how it could potentially play into Jordan Kyrou's future next here on 101 ESPN.
You can now listen to 101 ESPN on demand. Get caught up on all our shows and podcasts at 101ESPN.com or on the 101 mobile app. 101 ESPN podcasts are presented by the Schaefer Door Company. Getting you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
Alongside Jamie Rivers and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. He's a former superstar defenseman.
I love when you say that.
Let's talk a little hockey.
You can tell he never watched me play, but that's fine.
Not important. I see the stats. I know what a good shutdown defenseman looks like.
Don't look at those. No. Look at hits and block shots, okay?
So I'm watching the playoffs last night, Jamie, and the Vegas Golden Knights are on TV. They won in overtime against the Ducks. They're up 3-2 in their series. They're probably going to advance to the Western Conference Finals, which means Mitch Marner is likely to advance to the Western Conference Finals in his first year.
Well, that
in a
guy
Vegas
can't
Golden
perform
Knights
in the
uniform.
playoffs.
That's right, except for that he leads the playoffs in points so far.
Oh, wow.
This season, it was a quote-unquote down year for Mitch Marner during the regular season with 24 goals and only, by his standards, 80 points. In the postseason, he has 16 points in 11 games so far. What's the lesson here, Jamie? Because he's also a +9, so he is not only producing, his line is outproducing what the opposition is doing at 5-on-5. This isn't some, power play merchant. He's having success driving play at 5-on-5 for Vegas. He was a guy that couldn't win the big one with Toronto because they couldn't win the big one while he was there in Toronto for a decade. Is there any lesson here for the St. Louis Blues on the mix, the player, what you need in order to get over the top culture, all of that? What's the lesson here instilled in Mitch Marner?
Yeah, so a couple things is if you're a Blues fan and you're looking for like some kind of a parallel to Marner, look, Jordan Kyrou is not Mitch Marner. He doesn't have the same career numbers or he doesn't have the same impact on the game on a nightly basis, but he is a player that can impact the game. And he has done it for several years. What you got to realize here is Mitch Marner, it was him, Matthews, Nylander, Tavares to an extent, and then the other guys in Toronto. It's kind of what it was. So he played, 25 minutes a game, every situation. But when the playoffs came, that's all they had, too. They didn't have a really great defensive core. The goaltending was a question mark for years. So they weren't able to do what they needed to do, in my opinion, to help support Nylander, Matthews, or Marner. I'm not going to count Tavares because he's a different player, different part of his career right now. When you look at Vegas, that team is built to support high-end players. Jack Eichel, Mark Stone, Barbashev. Like you go down the line of play, great defensive core. The goaltending was suspect this year, but up until this year, pretty good goaltending. And the way Bruce Cassidy was coaching the team was way more defensive-minded. So when you look at the drop in point totals for Marner, the team overall plays way more defensive, and he got less ice time because there was more ice time to be spread around throughout the Golden Knights roster. And I think that's one thing you learn. And by being able to shave down the minutes while creating a really good support cast, some of them, Jack Eichel's not a support cast.
Sure.
He's the driver of the bus, but so is Barbashev, so is Stone. Like, you've got some guys there. You got some dudes. But by doing that, now Mitch Marner is, I wouldn't say well-rested, but he's got tons of energy left for the postseason. And now if you play him more, the body can sustain it while having that support group around it. The roster in Vegas, this is no secret, is better than the roster we have here in St. Louis.
Yeah.
It just is. At this point, a year or two down the road, who knows where the shift happens. So that automatically helps a player like Mitch Marner. Automatically. So if you took Jordan Kyrou and you put him in Vegas, you would see a different player because he's not required to do all the little things that we talk about, the little wall battle, the chipping the puck in here, this defense here. It's not that he wouldn't be asked to do it. He would be, because I can tell you this, NHL coaches, they like 200-foot players. Even if you score 100 points, they want you to play in your own end. And so, but just the overall roster construction of that team and the way they play their defensive system, it would mask some of his deficiencies while letting him go offensively.
I've got a stupid question for you, Jamie.
Oh, no, there's no stupid questions here.
And this is not to demean what we're seeing from Mitch Marner or the Vegas Golden Knights.
Sure.
How much of this is just they've had an easier draw?
As in the opponent?
You look at what Toronto lost to in the playoffs in recent
yeah,
seasons.
there's no doubt.
It's Tampa Bay, it's Florida twice, and it's Boston when they were awesome. So how much of this is just like, hey, man, if Toronto had stayed
back
the
to you
course,
didn't have the team, though, either. Because if Mitch Marner played in Florida, he would have had success.
But if you dropped that Toronto team over the last 3 or 4 years and gave them the exact same draw that we've seen this postseason from Vegas, where you've got Utah in round 1 and this Ducks team in round 2, do you think that Toronto team would have advanced to this Western Conference Finals?
No, I think they would have won a round.
Okay, so you think that this Ducks team would have been better than those Toronto teams?
The way they're playing under Joel Quenneville? Absolutely. Joel Quenneville would have absolutely had a system in place or scheme to take those three, the big three, off their game. Would have nullified what they could do.
What could they have done to support them? Was there a way to succeed given what the cap hits were and everything?
Yeah, so what they did is they married themselves to Morgan Riley. They thought he was a true number one defenseman in the NHL. He's not. And what's the one thing every year they tried to add at the deadline? D-man. You know, Brandon Carlo. They gave up the house for Brandon Carlo, who stinks. I don't think he's... He's 6'5", soft as you know what. Like nothing that I would write home about. Like, I'm just not a big fan.
I got that vibe.
Just not a big fan.
I haven't heard you talk about a defenseman this way, maybe ever.
Just not a fan. And then they got Tanev on defense. Oh yeah. All that. You know why that guy blocks so many shots? Because he can't skate and he's out of position all the time. And so therefore he has to sacrifice his body to block shots. They thought, we got our defensive guy to play with Morgan Riley. Great, he can't handle the puck or pass it tape to tape. Is that going to be a problem come playoff time? Yeah, it's a big one. So they kept putting their money down on pieces that weren't the right ones. It was bad roster construction and management by the team. Bottom line. And I may have moved on from one of either Nylander or Marner early, just because they're so similar. They're both right-handed shots, both dynamic players, both fighting for the same ice time, basically. Move on from one. Go get a number one defenseman. Go get your horse. Go get your stud back there, and then find goaltending. There's enough goaltending around the NHL that has either been revamped or traded for in the last 2 to 3 seasons that the Toronto Maple Leafs could have gotten in on.
It's crazy that Edmonton and Toronto have had as good of offensive production as they have over the last, let's call it 5 years, and neither of them can find a competent starting goalie. Meanwhile, you see in Vegas the way that they've cycled through guys. You see in Colorado the way that they've cycled through guys. And listen, not all of them have been great. No. But they find enough to be able to get competent goaltending.
Look at what Philly did. The Vladar kid, nobody really wanted him.
It was Calgary, right, for a while?
Then I forget what player it was. One of the Flyers players said to the management, and Rick Tocchet, you got to go get this guy. This guy's really good. So they kind of did some background check. Okay, brought him in, and look what he did. Carried a team for 3 weeks into the playoffs and through the first round. Now you're set between the pipes. So you've got this monster now that you can build around with a really good young team. Like the Flyers, they're going to be a thorn in the side for the next handful of years because of the way they've managed to build from the net out.
Before we get you out of here, Jamie, and we appreciate you doing this for an hour here on BK and Ferrario. We'll be able to listen to you coming up at 2 o'clock. You mentioned the Flyers. Would you be interested at all in Matvei Michkov?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I played in Russia. Know a lot of these guys, the way they're wired. I shouldn't say I would not be interested because it's depends what you're offering.
Of course, you're interested in anybody for the right price.
For the right price. Do I think that he can be fixed and things like that? I do. I just think it takes a lot of time. It's like any business that someone runs. If you can fix a lot of the elements, but if it takes so much time, energy, and money to fix that one element, is it really worth it in the end rather than just changing it? And putting something new in place. So,
because it sure seems like he's going to be on the move this offseason.
I know.
He's healthy scratched. After the year, he was asked to say what he thought of the season, and he said, I've got no comment. So it doesn't sound like a guy that's going to be long for Philadelphia, would be my guess.
And the worst part is that he is a guy that works really hard. You can tell that he wants to play, but it just sometimes the the difference in style of play from Russia, Sweden, Finland. It takes longer, and I don't know if the Flyers have the time or the desire to wait another year or two for Michkov to realize his full potential.
He's Jamie Rivers, former superstar Blues defenseman. You will hear him coming up at 2 o'clock here on 101 ESPN and each and every day from 2 to 6 on the Fast Lane. We certainly appreciate his time here on BK and Ferrario. Thank you, Jamie. Bradford Bruns will join me coming up next. 314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line. You give us two scenarios. We'll tell you which one is more likely to happen here on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN is powered by Kaufman Townsley, St. Louis's injury lawyers. Call 314-777-7777.
That's 314-777-7777.
The Redbird Report, your front row seat to all things Cardinals. From the dugout to the diamond, BK and T-Bone go deep with the latest news, notes, and analysis. Watch the Redbird Report on YouTube or listen online at 101ESPN.com. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Cards go up against again in Game 2. Good afternoon. Bradford Bruns here with your Sports Center update powered by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Tonight at 8:40, the Cardinals and A's once again square off Sacramento style. St. Louis took Tuesday's series opener 6-4 behind a 10-hit attack. This evening's matchup pits lefty Matthew Liberatore versus right-hander JT Ginn. Right now, AL-wise, Baltimore pacing New York 3-0, Cleveland edging LA 3-2. Calder Cup playoff playoffs. Thunderbirds Penguins action resuming tomorrow on 101 ESPN. 6:05 puck drop there. About 5 hours from now, Colorado could close out Minnesota NHL-wise. This Sports Center update has been brought to you by Soliga Heating and Cooling, a Daikin heating and air conditioning dealer.
We're right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. What's more likely to happen? They'll figure it out. BK and Ferrario's most likely to happen.
9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for more likely to happen. You give us two scenarios. We'll tell you which one is more likely here on 101 ESPN. I missed this earlier, just a little bit ago. The Calder Trophy voting was announced. Jimmy Snuggerud comes in 5th place in the voting for this year. He had 2 second-place votes and 6 third-place votes. So Jimmy Snuggerud finishes 5th in the Rookie of the Year vote. It was unanimous, though. Number 1 was Matthew Schaefer of the New York Islanders.
Not close.
Not close. He was the unanimous winner this season. All right, let's get into more likely to happen. You give us two scenarios. We'll tell you which one is more likely. More likely to happen this season, Bradford. The St. Louis Cardinals reach the postseason, or the St. Louis Cardinals finish below 500?
Let's go with the former. Cardinals reach the postseason. I have seen enough tangible evidence, BK, out of this team through the first month plus of the season to indicate to me, especially, and I'll say it too, in this division, this is not a team that is going to fall drastically below 500. You're vying, I think, in the mix right now, certainly, and this is irrespective of the fact that you may or may not add anyone near the deadline. I still don't think that's going to happen. The careful approach that is taken by this team game in and game out, look no further, obviously, than last night. The way in which that team started in the first inning, the patience, the discipline, going the other way. The only thing that could be the fly in the ointment, the pitching, yes. But I think you've got enough pieces. I like this team to make a run.
I really think this one could go either way, which is bad answer, but my honest answer, if I'm going to choose one side, I'll still go below 500.
Okay.
I do think there are enough warts on this team that they could finish with a top 10-ish offense, a bullpen that looks light by the end of the season, depending on what they do at the deadline, and a rotation that is still only 6 deep. And even among those 6, there's moments where you're not thrilled about really any of them. So I'll say it's still more likely that they finish below 500, but I'm getting closer to the this is a playoff team side of things, but I'll still say below 500. What do you got for us today, Bradford?
All right. The mudslinging BK against Ole Miss. It continues shortly after you had the former coach Lane Kiffin with some interesting remarks about the area inhabited by the university. We'll leave it at that. Texas head man Steve Sarkisian criticized the course catalog. Look, I say all of that to say this. More likely to happen, either Ole Miss or Texas, one of those two programs, wins the SEC title this coming season, or you take the field, Georgia, Bama, etc.
I think Texas is winning the title next year, so I'll say that side.
Is it particularly close for you, or do you think that this season that team is the legitimate front runner and will go for it?
I think this year they're the front runner. I think they have. I think this is the year that you see the Arch Manning that we've been waiting for. Coleman is an unbelievable wide receiver. They also have Wingo, who on like 95% of teams would be a number 1 wide receiver for you.
Oh, yeah.
So I think Texas is just, to me, the clear-cut best team in the country going into the season.
I don't want
and
to...
certainly in the SEC, by the way. I think they're head and shoulders above everybody else.
I think it's a cut above Georgia for sure. I do believe Bama even takes a step back, frankly, this season. If you look out front, the offensive line, too. I wouldn't necessarily sleep on Ole Miss to make a run, and here's why. Because the entire calculus changed when you realized, oh, Trinidad Chambliss indeed is coming back. And don't forget, Kewan Lacey, too. Can you keep up with the offense? Is there enough on the defensive side?
Yeah, and that's... I also wonder, year one under a new head coach, I know he did really well in the postseason. Credit to him. They deserved all of the praise that was placed upon them in the playoffs. I don't know what that looks like in a 12-game regular season in the SEC. So that's something to keep in mind as well. All right, let's get into this from the text line, 314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line for more likely to happen. More likely to happen this season. Snuggerud scores 30 goals, and Holloway reaches the 100-point threshold. So Snuggie 30 goals, Holloway 100 points, or Holloway gets to 30 goals and Thomas reaches that 100-point threshold. I think it's more likely you see the Holloway 30 goals and Thomas 100 points side of things.
Yeah.
Holloway getting to 100 points would be really tough.
I mean, that's remarkable. We talk about Robert Thomas, the centerman, trying to get to that 100-point barrier, too. If you are able to pot, 30 goals, Snuggerud, it seems basically he's earmarked. So many people want to say that for 30 or so next season. I definitely am going with the latter there.
More likely to happen. Walker hits 40 home runs or J.J. Weatherholt hits 30 this year. I'll go Walker 40.
Me too.
His raw power is just greater than what Weatherholt has, and that's no slight to Weatherholt. More likely to happen, the Blues select all 3 first-round picks, or they package all 3 of them to acquire a player. I think it's more likely they make all 3 of their first-round picks.
Yeah, you're not packaging the trio there. Absolutely not.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for more likely to happen. More likely to happen, the Cardinals have more or fewer wins than the Blues had points this year. So setting the over-under at 86.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Go higher or lower than 86 wins for the Cardinals this year.
I said this team would be vying for the playoffs. I believe that, but I think you can do so at just over 82 in that 84 range. I don't know, BK, if there's any sort of a scenario in which this team can get to 86. That's pushing it.
That's where I'm at. I would say under 86 wins for myself. Coming up next, let's get into the rewind here on BK and Ferrario.
Tonight, Avalanche and Wild. Pregame at 6:30, puck drop at 7. The NHL playoffs are on 101 ESPN. This is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Let's run it back with a daily rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Loom, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
If you guys missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. That's all sponsored by Schaefer Door Company. You can always go to the 101 ESPN app as well. That is sponsored by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. When you go over there, you'll be able to see our conversation with Jeff Marek of the Daily Faceoff. Highly recommend doing so. He had some good stuff on the playoffs and also what exactly he thinks the Blues should and will do this offseason and why he personally would not be in favor of trading Jordan Kyrou. We also had Jamie Rivers of the Fast Lane in with us for about an hour, had plenty of great conversations with him, especially as it pertains to the St. Louis Blues. So be sure to check all of that out. And right now on the YouTube page, youtube.com/101ESPNSTL, that is where you can go to see the latest edition of the Redbird Report. So be sure to check that out over there as well. That is where I want to finish with our show today. The St. Louis Cardinals last night get a nice win, 6-4 against the Athletics. They did most of their damage in the first inning. Those right-handed bats going up against a left-handed pitcher did pay off. It was smart of them to do, in my opinion. Talked about them and their lineup construction a bit yesterday, and they did decide to go primarily with those righty bats. You got a righty on the mound. JT Ginn is on the mound tonight for the Athletics, so I would assume you see something closer to what you would typically expect. Gorman back in the lineup. I think you'll see Scott and Church in the lineup today for the Cardinals as well. So that's the way they'll go about it tonight. The big thing for the Cardinals, and is not just to take away from yesterday, but overall, is what the top four in this lineup has been able to do for the Cardinals. Weatherholt, Herrera, Walker, and Burleson. What they represent for the Cardinals right now is really meaningful. You've got four guys under the age of 28 that have a real shot this season to be 20% above league average or better offensively. And if you're looking for teams that have been able to do that, they have that kind of a core group of players, 28 or younger, 20+% above league average. It's rare. In the last 15 years, it's only three other teams. It's the 2018 Yankees, the 2017 Astros, and the 2014 Pirates. Those are the three. All of them finished with 88 to 100 wins, legit playoff type of teams, and they had a core that they were able to build around, not only for that year, but for years to come. And that's what the Cardinals, it feels like, have built this season. Lofty company, to say the least. And those four have a real shot tonight to have more success. You're talking about the lone right-hander, BK, that you'll face in this series. Can you get after JT Ginn, with the exception of that start last week in which he inexplicably dominated Philadelphia, went 8+ innings, complete outlier from everything else we've seen so far in 2026. He's been very gettable. Can you get two in a row, setting the table for a sweep opportunity tomorrow, because you have your guy in McGreevy going up against a very vulnerable left-hander tomorrow afternoon? He is a guy that goes with a sinker and a cutter primarily, so you'll see a lot of that today against the Cardinals. He's somebody that tries to induce a lot of soft contact, and then he's going to have the ball on the ground. Sound familiar? This is the classic Cardinals pitcher. Oh, yeah. Not a ton of whiff, not a ton of strikeouts, but just overall really solid, more so than spectacular, and doesn't throw with a ton of velo either. He's a guy that's going to try to get you on the ground, and hopefully he hopes he's able to have success that way. Your hope is, as the Cardinals, all right, well, we're going to hit this thing hard, especially if you're Alec Burleson, J.J. Weatherholt, Nolan Gorman. Those left-handed bats, I would think, should be able to have a decent amount of success tonight against somebody like a JT Ginn. Did you enjoy watching that game at that ballpark last night, by the way? I did. I enjoyed it a lot. It was fun. You did feel it. Like, the doubles are real there. Plug those gaps. I can't totally explain it. The dimensions, it doesn't seem like, are all that different from your typical ballpark. I know in the summer, they've talked about how the heat in Sacramento is a big factor as to why there's so much more offense there, but I don't know, whatever it is, the doubles, that's my personal preference on style of baseball. I'm with you. This lineup is built to do a lot of that kind of damage, so I think you could see more of that tonight. I do think that the Cardinals will get a win in this one. I didn't feel great going into last night's game. That was the one that I thought they would drop early in the series, so I think they get the win tonight, 6-3 against against the Athletics.
And for Matthew Liberatore, eyeing a third consecutive solid start. You liked a lot more of what you saw out of him, especially in his last turn versus San Diego, for that matter, because you got 5+ against the Dodgers, but the ball was flying in the air. If you can see him once again work downward in the zone, consistently work deeper into ball games, it would do a lot tonight, because even though the bullpen was great last night, you didn't need 4 innings out of those guys, your top guys at bat.
He's Bradford Bruns. I'm Brandon Kiley. Thank you all so very much for tuning in today. Alex and T-Bone were out today. Alex will be back in with us tomorrow, though, so be sure to tune in tomorrow starting at 11 a.m. The Fast Line's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Start your day with a morning after on 101 ESPN. Get in the know first on everything St. Louis sports with Tim McKernan, Doug Vaughn, and Martin Kilcoy. Listen to TMA weekday mornings from 7 to 11 a.m. on 101 ESPN. The Morning After is presented by Brown and Crouppen Law Firm.
This is the story of the one.